All right, and we're live, and I went to the right screen this time. So uh, I'm super cool and good at this, I promise. So welcome to the Omnipotent Beard. We are up and running yet again. This is crazy. A lot of you guys, like, we had how many people waiting? Like 160 something people waiting and before we actually went live. But yeah, so we are here actually with our friend Erika. Erika, how are you doing?
I'm doing good, man. I'm doing all right. I'm excited to be here. I think that this is going to be this could only be a fun conversation. When you reached out and sent me kind of what we were covering, the first thing I thought is that this is going to be fantastic.
I ran across some of these things that, like, you know, Wu had said, right? And the first person that came to my mind was Erika, because Erika, for those of you that like, some of you guys that are watching know Erika, like H in the chat if you guys know Erika already. But Erika has been on Modern Day Debate a couple of times, quite a few times. You've hosted Modern Day Debate as well, right?
I have. Well, yeah, I mod sometimes for James Dillon when he needs me.
Yeah. So we got a super chat already. Oh my God, gut stick given. Or gut stick given. I keep saying gut stick. I don't know why I do that. I might do that a couple of times.
What it looks like.
Yeah. But anyway, but you have debated people like Standing for Truth, I think Praise That I Am, and Kent Hovind as well. Like, you specialize in ripping apart creationists, right?
All the big names in the young Earth creationist community. Yeah, that's and I say that kind of, you know, in a joking way, but yeah, I do love kind of arguing young Earth creationism with these guys. But you know, as we're gonna see today, boy, being a dingus when it comes to evolution just kind of spans all creeds, you know.
No, really I was surprised. Usually, okay, so usually pagans are pretty chill on science.
True.
Like, usually, that's what I've found.
I would agree with that. I've seen very little to the contrary, and you know, and typically, you know, when you sent this to me, I was like, dang, you guys had such a good track record.
I mean, we have, like, you know, the crystal stuff, like science revisionism and pseudoscience does show up, right? So, yeah. Like.
It's not fair. Yeah, it would be unfair. It would be unfair to kind of shoulder that burden alone, because I found, at least in my experience, that there are very few places rather that pseudoscience doesn't kind of creep into.
Mm-hmm.
I would argue even that it creeps into regular science. You know, people have their preconceptions for sure.
I've seen pseudoscience pop up in atheism. I've seen it pop up in Christianity. You know, see it pop up in paganism as well. So nobody's really immune. But I know. Wolf over here does collect conspiracies as well sometimes. Wolf, you got me
on the spot.
You've got some stories. I know you.
I have been known to dabble in things that are utterly ridiculous.
Yeah, hold on. Actually, you know, shit.
Everyone is allowed to have their one conspiracy theory. Their one, you know, kind of idea that's like a little bit woo.
Let me clarify. I don't actually believe them. I find the ridiculousness. I figure out why it is that they believe what they do, and then I go and join that community and pretend to be them so that they trust me, and then join, you know, like divulge further, and I get like personal accounts from people and whatnot.
I like it.
Do you want to tell the story?
I'll give a really quick rundown of this. I won't make it the long version.
Right.
I ended up with a lot of free time. I got hurt at work, ended up with a ton of free time. I had 3 months where I was just down and had unlimited phone time. And I stumbled into the flat earth movement right as it was starting to gain its like real popularity. It was around the time that guy was building the rocket, and he was going to shoot up into the atmosphere so that he could prove that the earth was flat. So I found a Facebook group that had like 37,000 members in it. And I got really talkative in there, and I realized they were really bad at making arguments, clearly, because the flat earthers, what argument is there? But I figured out that I could say their bullshit back to them better than they could. I could make it sound better than even they could. And the mods of the group started trusting me a little bit more. And they were like listening to what I had to say. I was giving them like even worse bullshit than even they had. I was giving like worse justifications for it, but they were buying it hook, line, and sinker. Um, and
This
like
is why Poes are bad too, guys.
yeah. Pose are the worst. And so when I was like trying to show my friends, I was like, "Hey guys, look how crazy these guys are," and they're like, "No, they're all just you. They're all pretending too." I was like, "No, man, no, trust me."
I had a period as well where I was like, surely all the flat earthers are they're all faking it. They're all thinking the other ones aren't.
I wish.
And then I had the pleasure, the utmost pleasure of discussing evolution with Nathan Thompson, who is also a flirter as well. And I realized that no, people really can be that dumb. Like they really can be. There are no limits.
Right. So, do we want to pop up this video that, we talked about a little bit, and just let you kind of talk about it afterwards?
No,
Like,
we're gonna have to. We don't
All
have
right.
a choice.
Yeah. So, let's see. We got some super chats coming up. Let's go ahead and deal with some super chats before we jump over there. Let's see. Wingy Wonky 00 says, "I want to thank you, Ocean and Leakai, for saving me from Woo's woo-woo nonsense. Hail the gods," with a little wizard fucking shout out. We got a new member, and let's see. Biggest atheist believer in pseudoscience I can remember is Fringe Elements. He was a scientific racist and modern day segregationist.
Yeah.
This is a thing, isn't it?
It is a thing.
That you get like the race realist types showing up in atheist movements as well.
It's almost like all this bullshit is tied together somehow.
I seem to recall T-Jump being torn apart by someone on that subject. What? Yeah,
no.
He's a
not
little bit of
T-Jump.
a race realist over there.
No.
Torn apart? Say it ain't so.
Anyway, so I'm going to switch over to this video section that I got here, and we're going to do
doing the first one.
Yeah, we're doing the first one.
What are your thoughts?
So let me know when you guys got it pulled up on your end, and I'll just press play here real quick.
Do a countdown. 3, 2, 1.
3, 2, and 1.
What are your thoughts on how humanity came to be on this planet? Man, if you want to dive into my conspiracies, I don't think humans are from here. I think humans came from somewhere else, but that's definitely my conspiracy.
Of course.
But as far as like the Norse belief in it, I mean, obviously, I believe in evolution. To me, the reason I don't think humans are necessarily from here is because when I look at evolution, and I look what we're related to, I don't see enough connections between like primates to us. Like there seems to be a lot of missing information between those two things. So to me, it seems like we were not necessarily from here. But, that's just my crazy theory. And obviously, like if you go into the mythos, we were created from like bark or whatever. So maybe the gods came here, saw like what the world was doing and created humanity. We definitely seem to be some form of uniqueness as far as like our capacity for connection. It's very interesting. Like humans are definitely an interesting role, and I don't know if we can just chalk everything up to evolution. Humans are weird, very strange creatures.
So,
boy,
what are your thoughts on that, Erika?
When I said this to you guys before we started this, but it's like you have to wonder if the education background here has crested above like middle school biology with regard to the basics of evolution, and specifically human evolution and why we are what science says we are. I see this a lot too with the creationists. It's a misunderstanding of how taxonomy works and like what the law of monophyly is, right? So I would wager if you ask this guy if he thought he was a mammal, he would probably say, well, yes, yeah, we have hair and females of our species produce milk. So yeah, I would say that we're mammals. Sure, that works. But by that same criteria, humans are primates, and indeed, down the line, we are haplorhines, and we are anthropoids, and we are hominids, all the way down to Homo sapiens, right? It's all just about more specific criteria, right? So what is a primate? It tends to be the question. If I were to sit down with our boy here, I would say, all right,
God damn it, Eric. Okay.
I'd be like, dude, okay, do you have binocular color vision? You got eyes in the front, and can you see color? Yes. Okay, well, do you have like dexterous grasping hands? Well, yes, of course. Are they tipped in nails or claws? Well, they're tipped in nails. Do you have a flexible shoulder girdle, more so when compared to like any other, non-primate mammal? Yes, you do. Large brain to body size when compared to other mammals? Yes, you do. That's all a primate is. And you can go down the line. You can do that again if you wanted to do it with haplorhines, which are, primates that aren't lemurs, right? Do you have the split lip? No, you don't have a split lip. You've got a dry nose, right? Do you have postorbital plates or bars? That's like the area behind the brow ridge.
So split lip, I guess, is what you find in like a llama or something like that, or is that? Am I on the right track here? Because you're saying split lip, and I'm like, okay, wait, what has a split lip? I don't even.
So when you look at a dog or a cat and they've kind of got that little
yeah.
So that's a split lip, right?
Right.
And lemurs, for instance, they have that. They've got the split lip, they've got the whiskers, whatever. They're primates because they've got binocular color vision and all the rest of those traits that I mentioned. But they can't ascend past that point. They stay strepsirrhines and go down the strepsirrhine route rather than being a haplorhine, which is us. We don't have the split lip, and our noses are dry. Like if you walk up to any monkey, any kind of monkey, and you put your hand in their face and smudge up their nose, it's not gonna be like a puppy or with a cat where your finger comes back dry. Or it comes back wet. My mistake. We've got dry noses. And what taxonomy is looking at these suites of characteristics and saying what animals fit into them. You can take humans completely out of it, and all of these classifications for primates still hold true for all of the other primates.
Okay.
It's when you include humans in the list, we meet all the criteria and land within the hominids, within the apes. And that's. I think it's really based in epic, but I guess some people are
based in epic.
Man, that's a good way to word that. I'm gonna remember that.
So okay, let's steelman the opposition here a little bit and talk about there do seem to be some pretty massive differences between humans and other primates with respect to our say intelligence level or something, or we use tools, our hair placement. I've heard that we're like water apes or something like that. Like this is a whole. There's a big discussion on this. We live on the coastline. We don't run around in trees like a lot of other, primates do. So what? And then there's also the thing that Wu brought up in the video, which was that our capacity for connection seems to be unique as well. So what do you think about a lot of those objections?
Oh man, I could sit down and write a small book about all of that, as a chunk together. With regard to connection, and I bring this up all the time because I think it's so great. Robert Sapolsky is this primatologist, right? He studies baboons. And he very famously in one of his lectures said that there are ways to classify animals in comparison to humans, right? And you get three big categories. You get things that humans do that are just the same as what other animals do. You get things that humans do that are the same as what other animals do, but we tweak it slightly.
Right.
And there are things that are wholly unique to humans. And the pool for things that are wholly unique to humans is somewhat small, right? Because we build tools. We're sitting here talking to each other using a tool, a very advanced tool. But for instance, chimpanzees sharpen sticks with their teeth to skewer bush babies in the trees that they then
they're using tools, basically. Okay.
Yeah, they totally use tools. They crack nuts with rocks. They have their favorite rocks that they carry around with them to crack because they know that these ones work really well.
Really?
Yeah, they do.
They have. Looks like you'll get chimpanzees with favorite rocks that they just keep.
Yeah, I've actually heard that before.
That's cool as hell. I didn't know that.
Yeah, they're really, really interesting. There's it's not just the chimps either. There's a picture that I like to show all the time of this a female orangutan, and she's got her hand up in the trees, and she's got a sharpened spear. There's no other way to put it. It's a stick with a sharpened end, and she's jamming it into the water. And this picture was taken by some primatologists who noticed that she was mimicking local fishermen. So she saw fishermen who were using spears to skewer fish in the water, and was trying to copy them, right? Unsuccessfully, but the fact that she was able to sharpen a stick with her teeth and then poke it in the water, monkey see, monkey do.
Right, starting to imitate and being like, all right, well, maybe if this works, I can probably figure this out. Kind of, you see the problem solving taking place. Yeah.
Well, and primates, other primates, very specifically other hominids like us, there's a litany of research out there on this, but they understand fairness to the same degree that we do. Essentially, they know when they're getting the short end of the stick, and they alter their behavior if people are if conspecifics, other fellow troop members, are watching. So they did this experiment where they had 2 chimpanzees, and they gave them red tokens and blue tokens. And if you turned in a red token, you would get 5 grapes. I can't remember the specifics, but it doesn't really matter.
You get more grapes, I guess, with one of the tokens.
But if you give the blue one, you get 2, but your friend in the neighboring area who can see you also gets some. And the interesting thing is they would give these blue tokens over and over and over again so that both parties could benefit. And they realized that if they closed the window so that the other chimpanzees out in the yard couldn't see them, they started getting really selfish and started
using red tokens.
For the red tokens.
Yeah, started using more red tokens, sometimes a blue one, but there was a heavy bias more towards selfish, quote unquote, behavior.
Right.
They have politics. They have in both bonobos, the matriarchal chimps, and common chimps, the patriarchal chimps.
Whoa! I don't want any politics in my science.
Oh yeah.
Down with the chimp patriarchy. All right.
Oh yeah. The alpha males, the big, what is it that now? I'm sure there's some sigma male chimps out there too doing.
Oh my God, bringing in sigma males. Did you just say that?
Listen, you can kick me out of the stream, but
no, you're my new favorite person.
Erika's dropping bombs over here. All right.
Oh man.
Trying to make is that all of the social behaviors that humans have, other apes have to a degree, right? They do fairness, they do sympathy, they do empathy, they grieve when loved ones die, they laugh when they get tickled, they smile in order to calm other ones down, they console. If there's a famous picture of a female consoling a male because he just got his ass kicked in a fight.
Where's this idea then that that chimps and bonobos don't have connection then? If there's we have, you're just listing off all kinds of things that are very human things to do. But very much so. Yeah. And therein lies the problem, right? I mean, Sapolsky, like I said earlier, what I was getting at is that he categorized the thing that humans do that's unique is we empathize through space, time, and reality. So you and I, all 3 of us, we can sit here and we can feel bad for a person that lived 2,000 years ago and be sad that something bad happened to them. We can read about horrific wars that occurred thousands of years in the past and be like, damn, that really sucks. Right.
Or we can read about someone who never existed in a fictional book and we can say,
care about that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really sad. And that's something that only we can do. But what I always try to emphasize to people is that it's that's something that's special to humans, but there's stuff that's special to pretty much every organism on this planet that only they can do. So, therein lies the interesting dichotomy of what is human exceptionalism.
People are jumping in the chat asking if you have a channel. Yes, this is Erika is Gutsick Gibbon. Her channel is in the description of the video, I believe. Which or one of the mods, if one of you guys can link to Erika's channel, just so that people can go ahead and start subscribing, because I know I'm seeing that there's some people that are really excited about listening to you. They want to learn more about evolution and all that jazz. So, definitely check out Erika's channel. While we're doing that, let's go through some super chats, because I saw some stuff in there that was interesting. This is just to yell at Ocean for sending me the giant video last night from on you for that, good sir. I sent that to Erika too. So we're actually going to be looking at that. I hate ancient aliens. It takes away, let's see, the Celestial Angel 666, awesome screen name. I hate ancient aliens. It takes away from all that humans have done. And also, chimpanzees also wage war and kill other chimpanzees. That's another much more disturbing way that they are very similar to us humans. Want to talk about that? Is that a thing?
It is, yeah. They wage war with one another, and interestingly enough, there have been some cases where after defeating a rival chimp, and this is in common chimps, so pan troglodytes. You get the common chimps and then the pygmy chimps. The pygmy chimps are bonobos, so slightly smaller.
Right.
They live on the other side
Right.
of the Congo. And yeah, they'll wage these wars, and then they'll tear the corpses of these felled foes to pieces, not to consume them, but it's almost ritualistic. I hesitate to use that word because it's
Right.
so anthropomorphic, but it's really strange. They also know which parts hurt the most. Like they'll go for, if males are
So
fighting,
they'll do actions
They'll go
that
for genitalia.
bingo, and fingers.
that
Yep.
for the specific purpose of causing pain.
So if you ever get in a fight with a chimp, you gotta protect yourself, because that's where they go first in a fight. They will go and try to rip the junk off.
My advice is, if you get in a fight with a chimp, you are a better long distance runner than they are by a lot. So you just want to start looking at.
Yeah, you just want to run.
Run them.
Yeah,
But
you just
on
wanna
the
run.
Unless you're in a tree.
Yeah, unless you're in a tree.
Jump out of the tree. It's your only chance.
The cool and sexy flip side of this is that bonobos do things that humans do in a less violent way. They they have sex for fun, and they're also some of the only primates that engage in sexual activity outside of just
Procreation.
But they also they do fellatio, and they do cunnilingus and things
Hell
like that.
yeah.
But
Hell yeah.
they're also really into they don't see gender really, so they'll just have sex across all lines, and they do it to mitigate stress. So to get in a fight,
But just stress relief is like, I guess a fight will start and then they'll end up just in
That's
embrace.
awesome.
So I'm doing my master's right now in primatology. I'm finishing up my thesis,
Mhm.
and one of my friends my colleagues rather, who finished her thesis already, she immediately got a job and is currently in the Congo with the bonobos there. So I get an email from her once every couple of weeks, because they use a satellite phone. And she was telling me about that the other day. She was like, man, she's like, it kind of feels like you're a voyeur almost observing these guys sometimes, because they're just always
Constantly.
at it.
Okay. So speaking of human connection to primates, evolutionarily, where's the branch off? And how much evidence do we have for that? Do we have evidence for that? Because I think that one of the objections that I think that people are saying when they say is there's not very many connections between us and primates, is yeah, sure, maybe we look similar, or maybe we're a creation that's based on them or something like that, or maybe that I don't know what "we're not from here" means. I've heard that mean everything, that we're from Mars, or that the human Martian theory is a little interesting. But wait, what did you say, Wolf?
There was a comment that was said that wasn't a super chat, but I want to highlight it because it's perfect, and I've heard this before.
Go for it.
Just because white people couldn't do it doesn't mean it was aliens.
Highlight. Yeah, that's one of the things. Can we talk about ancient aliens for a second? Because
I would love nothing more.
Okay. So
That's why you're here.
So one of the things that I personally get frustrated with, history nut, is I see ancient aliens and all this kind of stuff. It's and the pyramids are so exact, and I'm like, yes, because they could measure things at that point. You know what I mean? I think that the idea of this is really impressive, therefore it couldn't have been us, undermines who we are, and undermines things to celebrate about humanity, kind of being fuck it, let's start farming, and fuck it, let's start building giant monolithic structures, and then fuck it, let's do civilization. That was a human act,
Yeah.
It wasn't crediting that to aliens undercuts us significantly, I think.
Yeah.
It totally does, and this idea that humans aren't clever enough, and interestingly, this does seem to fall on the white non-white line when you see ancient aliens folks talk about it. But it's wild when you think about the human ingenuity of this. You've got these megalithic structures like the pyramids of Giza, which are the classically mentioned ones, but what they don't ever talk about is all the failed pyramids prior to that we also have evidence for. We've got The red pyramid, which is slightly prior, was the first pyramid that was like, yes, this looks like a pyramid. But before that, you've got the bent pyramid, which goes like this, and then all of a sudden they were like, oh shit, we don't have enough room, and it's like clunk, on the top. It's messed up. And that's because they didn't get it right the first time. There are so many different failed pyramids that existed, and
there's failed pyramids after the pyramids of Giza too, because you had economic slumps in Egypt where it's like there was a period of grand pharaoh burials, and then there was a period of, well, I want a pyramid, but we can't really afford like that really nice pyramid, but I still want a pyramid. And then you have later on where it's like buried tombs, like Tutankhamun, right? Yeah. So like you have different phases of Egyptian history with that, but yeah, you have an evolution of pyramids going from like, you can see the development, and then you can kind of see the decline afterwards from like, oh, we can't afford, this is unsustainable. We can't do this every single time a pharaoh dies, right? Ultimately that undercutting of us, of saying like this was amazing, therefore, it's the aliens that we called gods came down and taught us something, or like it takes away the achievement, I think.
And the funny thing about that is that stops once we stop having when records are like less precise, I suppose. So all of the humans creating incredible things today and over the past 1,000 or so years through human ingenuity, it's all believable because we remember it, we keep records of it. But all for when it's not right in front of you with the instructions, people tend to be like, oh well, I guess it was aliens. If they didn't leave us a step-by-step, how DIY, right? Then it must have been aliens. It's like, no, it's just not that simple.
By fun experience with, I ran into a guy who believed that the reason, this is one of my favorite conspiracy theories ever. All right, the pyramids are pre-flood structures that were power plants. All right. And there was a secret power plant that's kept inside one of the sarcophaguses in the king's room of the Great Pyramid. And the reason why Pharaoh was chasing Moses was because Moses stole it, and it was the Ark of the Covenant. And it was the Ark of the Covenant was this power source that was then used. Isn't this amazing? I love. Dude, it's not.
Dude, I'm getting stomach ulcers. Like the thing is, it's amazing, and I love it. And I'm like, this would make like a badass like Indiana Jones movie, or something, right? But then it's like people will be like, oh yeah, dude, you know about that Ark of the Covenant power plant, don't you? And then it's like, oh boy.
But okay, so we got some. I hate Ancient Aliens. Okay, wait, it's never Ancient Aliens when it's Celtic Torques from the Iron Age. The wire they hammered to make them was pretty crazy amazing. Yeah, I have seen Ancient Aliens talk about like in relation to Stonehenge before, but I think that's the only Celtic one that I've ever heard of.
Right.
Or even European.
They'll do Göbekli Tepe, which is getting less white, I guess, with that, but even then it's still
I watched a dude build Stonehenge in his backyard using
levers,
like just little levers and tiny little rocks. He'd set a tiny little rock down, and he could move just using the weight distribution, just move these 2-ton rocks by one hand and just casually push it.
Yeah.
And just using that engineering, that math, and built Stonehenge accurate to size and weight in his backyard by himself.
So cool. And you gotta think too, these people had nothing better to do than sit around and like try to stay alive. And then when they had free time, they were like, well, I guess we'll build some cool shit, And it's like,
right.
Okay, yeah, do it.
Mesolithic was like a lot of these things are what's called Mesolithic structures. And the Mesoliths is right before Neoliths, before everybody started farming. So you did have points where people were gathering together. It was like the precursor to people starting to go like, oh, we should all just live in one place and start growing our food. But you did like people started gathering in places, and there were big gathering places that people would trade different items and figure out, hey, if we work together, we can survive longer. Like that dawning realization had hit humanity at that point. And that's where you start getting these henges, and you have wooden henges and stone henges that start popping up all over Europe. And you have similar structures like that pop up all over the world because humans were thinking this way generally across the world of like, yeah, if we work together, we can survive. And hinges are just part of that. So yeah, at that point of time, you have people that are spending a lot of their day very physically active, hunting. They had to know a little bit about everything in order to survive. So it makes sense that they would figure out how to move giant stones together in order to make a spot that here is where we do not have war. Here is where we gather together. And it's like, that just makes sense, you know?
A mutual understanding of reverence, right? Like it's this idea that it's like, okay, you know, we are at the stone site, everyone chill, like we're going to have a big feast. It's going to be great. And they roll with it. It's one thing that you said that was interesting is that, we see repeats of similar structures all like globally, which is very interesting because, you know, it's kind of like mimicking convergent evolution that we see in nature, but with ingenuity and human thought, right?
Right.
So people are all like, well, we want to make this cool thing. Well, I guess we'll just make like a pyramid, you know, and it always starts out the same. They start with mastabas and then they stack the mastabas and then you get, you know, something that starts to look like a pyramid and then you get a full pyramid. Sometimes with smooth sides, sometimes you get the steps. Like
the steps like ziggurats in Sumeria.
Yeah. Right. But it's same general shape, and it's because, you know, humans, we tend to come up with similar ideas to solve the same problem. It doesn't mean that like
also if you're going to build a really tall building, what's the simplest way to do it?
Right? You don't
big fucking triangle.
Just big triangle, right? The bigger the triangle, the better the better the ancient civilization.
Right.
That's what I say.
That's some Illuminati propaganda I'm hearing right now.
Oh, dude, you don't rat me out to the deep state, please.
We're on
the way. There's a black helicopters outside right now.
They'll cut off my Soros checks. I can't afford it.
I told you she could fire back, Wolf.
That's good. I did not expect that at all. I did not expect that.
So
wild card.
Something that I guess I asked a second ago, but we wound up veering off for a second into ancient aliens because thank you for the super chats. But we about the connections between primates and humans, right? So what are fossils? What are the missing links that aren't there, Erika? There's not enough missing links that are missing.
I know. I always
transitional forms.
The Futurama skit, right, where it's like, well, you have the link between Australopithecus afarensis and Australopithecus africanus, but what about the link between, you know, they got
exactly.
But yeah, so generally speaking, we've got a fantastic fossil record for the human lineage post-human chimp split. Better than most organisms, I would say, because we're so narcissistic. We put a whole lot of work into how did we come to be, rather than, you know, I don't know, proboscideans like elephants and the like, which we still know a lot about them, but we know more about us.
I was actually looking into those fossils a couple of days ago because someone posted an image and I saw this little tiny elephant that was called Luca or something like that, and I was like, there's a little tiny species of elephant, and I looked up, it was like it's a baby mammoth that was like frozen or something like that.
You say that, but Stegodon was a dwarf elephant that was about the size of a large dog that lived on the island of Flores.
There is a dog-sized elephant.
There was
a dog-sized elephant that I can't have as a pet, and I'm sad about.
It's tragic, but you wouldn't want to live there because while the elephants got smaller, the storks and the rats got bigger. So you get island dwarfism and island gigantism. And the funny thing is, there were hominins living there, and those hominins are called Homo floresiensis. Their nickname in paleontology is the Hobbit because they were about 3.5 feet tall, all of them.
That's amazing.
Wow.
There is in South Africa. There is
Great Danes are bigger than that.
There's a mountain called Table Mountain right outside of Cape Town, and it encircles Cape Town a little bit. But at the top of it, there's this little critter apparently that is related to the elephant, more closely related to the elephant than rodents, but it looks like a damn rodent. Yeah, hyrax, that's what they are. They're adorable, but apparently they're an elephant relative.
Yeah, so they split off with the proboscideans. Oligocene, maybe earlier,
right?
A long time ago, and they stayed small. They kept this itty bitty lineage with the mammals and capitalized on being small and exploiting resources for the small. But of course, their sister group, which is the elephants, they got huge. They just took advantage of that. And then, of course, on flora, some of them got small again. It's all a game of what's going to be best for your given environment. And if you go on an island and you're a big animal, it's better to get small because you can hold more animals on the same spot. You can get more resources. But yeah, we have an excellent fossil record for the human lineage. We've got some 17 plus well-documented hominins, and they bridge the gap of what makes humans different from our common ancestor with chimps, which is, in my opinion, although there's been recent literature on this that's been going around, is an animal called Sahelanthropus chilensis. This guy looks like a chimp. He's essentially a chimp, right? Big honking canine teeth, a brain case that's like 350 cc's, so small. For the record, ours is about 1,200 to 1,300. So it's a small little brain guy.
Is it one of those guys behind you?
It's not, but I'm going to grab one of those in a second.
Excellent. I was hoping you would start grabbing skulls and throwing them at the camera. All right.
My goal is to have all 17 so I can pull them all off whenever I need
Hell
to.
yeah.
But I need a bigger background. But yeah, this guy had so small brain case and big canine teeth. The classic hallmarks of something that is very Miocene ape, for lack of a better term.
Okay.
But there's nothing special about this guy. And this guy had a hole, a foramen magnum, at the base of the skull that was more underneath the skull than any other Miocene ape living at that time. Now, it should make sense. It should be somewhat intuitive, right? That if you've got a hole that's underneath your skull, you're holding your skull right on top of your spinal column, like that.
Right.
So this is a human skull. You'll notice that the foramen magnum, this hole right here, it's right at the base.
Okay.
And by using the dimensions of, statistically speaking, in a stats analysis of the location and the angle of this foramen magnum, you can tell with pretty decent accuracy whether the organism that you're looking at was bipedal or not. And Sahelanthropus chilensis looks like it was walking around on 2 feet, which is interesting because it's very apish and it's very old. Now, after this guy, you get the likes of Ardipithecus ramidus or Tugenensis, these guys that were definitive bipeds. We know for sure these guys were walking on 2 feet because we've got their femurs. And the way that a femur looks, right, is that, and actually, Ocean, if you want, you can pull up that picture that I sent you.
We got a picture being sent to me in DMs. All right, hold on.
There should just be that one with all the skulls because I think it's good.
Aha! We have a bunch of, this is a very skullfully done image, I see.
Oh, yes. Very skillfully done.
Unspecified error.
I don't know about you guys, chat, but I'm learning a whole lot right
now. Info dump. That's what we like to see.
It's info dump, but it's in like words my 3-year-old brain can understand. So I appreciate it.
Hey man, it's everything feels like your 3-year-old until you start, kind of
True.
looking into it. That's how I feel.
True.
But essentially what you're seeing once you reach Ardipithecus ramidus, which lived like 4.4-ish, 5 maybe million years ago, is you're starting to see the very first traits of hominins, which is our line, right? Walking on 2 feet and the adaptions that come along with that. So that's adaptions with the foramen magnum, that's adaptions with the length of the feet, or the length of the legs, the limb bones, as well as an inline big toe. So a chimp, obviously their hind foot looks kind of like my hand, right? With the thumb out to the side. But once we reach Ardipithecus ramidus, that toe is starting to come inward and be in line with the rest of the feet. And it's starting to be similar in distance, right? So you start to get something that's looking a little bit more like a foot. Even though these guys were still pretty flat-footed. They're still kind of walking around, chomping around. But the interesting thing about this is that initially when everyone was trying to figure out human evolution back in like the 40s, the big question was, well, what happened first? Did we get smart or did we start walking on 2 feet? And that was the big disagreement. Once we found the Australopithecines, we knew for certain that it was 2 feet. We got on 2 feet. We were dumb apes walking around on 2 feet before we were smart. And that kind of makes sense because when you're living out on the savannah, it's certainly advantageous to be able to see over all that tall grass. And we know we were living on the savannah because the East African Rift, where we evolved, was pulling away from, or rather was recessing and becoming a more desert, arid environment. So you get all this selection for something that can see above the grass, that can sweat really well because you got to be running around in the heat and things of that nature. And with these Australopithecines, you got dudes walking around on 2 feet for sure. The brain case has skyrocketed. You're up to about 550 cc's. So you're getting close to midway between humans and chimps with these guys. They've got itty bitty canine teeth. The canines are essentially gone, which I think kind of sucks because big canine teeth are awesome.
I finally got the skull thing working.
Sick.
It's now on the screen where you have like A, B, C, D, like all these different skulls. So, yeah. So is this all of the ones that all the different species that we have access to right now as far as the skulls go?
No,
or
that's a very outdated picture.
oh shit.
No,
Okay.
yeah. So that's I ripped that from Talk Origins from like their 2005 page. So we've discovered since then probably 4 or 5 more. Homo naledi was this past decade. Homo floresiensis was like 2006, I want to say. The Hobbit was. We got Australopithecus sediba, who came out also this past decade. But yeah, this is Lucy, right? Australopithecus afarensis, who I've got in my hand right now. She's got a flat face. She's got a spinal cord that pops out of the bottom of the skull like that. Really tiny canine teeth. And kind of a reduced muzzle with a decent brain case size, right? So this is like, you couldn't ask for a better missing link than A. afarensis, I don't think. These guys are like squarely in between us and chimps. And
Okay.
that's like 4 or maybe 3-ish million years ago. And from then, things just continue on their merry way. Brain case size gets bigger. We start to see the emergence of tools, traces of fire, hand axes, and then more and more complex stone.
And there was like a number of different split offs of species that were happening all at the same time, right? Like even when what we consider modern humans started existing, there were still like a ton of other different little hominids checking things out. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but I've heard something about a volcano.
Yeah, that was put out there at one point as this idea for, well, why do humans have low-ish diversity when compared to other apes? And the idea was that at some point the Toba eruption, which was this big ass volcano over in Indonesia, just went off, and a ton of species suffered because of it, et cetera, and caused a bottleneck of humans down to a couple thousand breeding pairs. That is not accepted unilaterally.
Okay.
In fact, I think it's kind of on the decline. I think now it's pretty well considered that our diversity is just a result of a bunch of founder effects. So this idea is that it's like,
what's a founder effect? Now help me out here.
So like, let's say you live in a tribe with a bunch of your family members and like maybe 2 other families. And you guys are doing well, whatever. And then 2 of the families of the 3 decide to strike out and go migrate somewhere else. You guys are like, I'm done with this. I don't think that there's enough wildebeest here.
Fuck this shit. I'm out.
Yeah, we're out of here. So you F off and go down to a new place 100 miles east.
Right.
Well, that's all fine and dandy, but your genetic pool for which you can select from mates has decreased by quite a bit. You've lost a whole family group.
Okay.
Right.
And so that diversity has just plummeted. And you're going to inevitably get some, even if it's unintentional, some inbreeding going on there, marrying second cousins, things like that. And it's just
because my split off tribe had a population of 12.
Yeah.
And yeah.
So is that what happened to Alabama? Like, is that why? That's why like they can't keep the roads together and all that. It's just
no way, dude. They did it for fun. They were into it. That was just what they were about.
I don't know about all that. I don't know.
Keep it in the family, y'all.
Oh, I know. Yeah.
So.
Yeah, but no. What you said earlier is true though. We get they call it contemporaneity. So it's like multiple hominins living at once. Pick a time period between now and 7 million years ago, and you've got more than one hominin species running around,
right?
Probably interacting with one another. The Paranthropines split off around the same time the Australopithecines did from the common ancestor of them both. And it's interesting because they took totally different strategies. We in all likelihood descend from the Australopithecines that were gracile. They were thinner. Lucy is one of the Australopithecines. And probably did some scavenging, maybe some light hunting. They're incorporating more meat into their diet. They're eating a shit ton of fruit. They're staying in big groups, and they're sacrificing jaw size for brain case size.
Okay.
Not intentionally, of course, but brains are getting bigger. Jaws.
That's what's selecting as they're breeding forward, is that there's like less focus on a jaw that can bite through coconuts, and.
Well, and the wild thing about that is the Paranthropines went the totally opposite direction. Their nickname is Nutcracker Man.
Wait, I was joking. Are you kidding me? There's a.
This is gonna blow your mind.
Okay, tell me a story. I want to hear this.
These guys looked basically like the Australopithecines did, except they had much flatter faces, like similar to what you would see with like those big flanged orangutans kind of. And their molars, like a single molar of theirs, even though they were smaller than we are now, one of their molars was equivalent to 4 of our molars.
Jesus, that's a giant tooth.
That's all they did, is they cracked big ass nuts with their teeth, and they ate tubers, and they sat around and like digested food, and they did pretty damn well for themselves for a long time.
I need in my life a nutcracker based on this fossil.
Oh my God, it's the perfect Christmas gift.
Right. It's like just, just with the little lever on the back, except it's just, I can kill almonds with,
real blast from the past.
A pre-human primate. Yeah. Like that would be fucking cool.
Dude, these dudes are a little uncanny valley though. Like you see some of these reconstructions and you're kind of like that looks a little too much like me, but also different from me. So
right.
I'm scared of it, which
I saw in some of your videos, you have like this sequence, like almost sequence of evolution, like of switching between numerous reconstructed faces. Yeah. And some of them look very human, like where it's like, if I guess in modern day, if I was walking around the wild and seeing it, would be hard for me to be like, that's not so different from me. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, and the question, there used to be all of this stuff where anthropologists were like, well, it's tool use that separates humans from the other animals. And then we found Homo habilis and realized the Australopithecines were probably using tools. So they were like, okay, well, maybe it's fire. Found out Homo erectus is using fire, and then we thought, well, maybe it's language. But then we find the hyoid bone. It's a bone in your neck that's not attached to any other bones. Kind of looks like a C. And we find out that they've got hyoids, which means they probably were
So
language.
The connections keep building and building and building. So this idea that there's not very many connections between us and primates just becomes less and less true the more we find, I guess.
It's a gradient. It would be like saying, where does red become blue? There
That's
is no
so funny.
point, right?
What's up?
It's so funny. Like you go to prove how humans and primates are different, and at every turn, you're finding that we share just so many things. Yeah. That's hilarious. I didn't know that process. So that's kind of that.
So like trying to identify what the meaningful difference is and throughout.
You're having to struggle to find the difference. That's hilarious. God, I love science.
The funny thing is that picture of the skulls that you've got up there, I use that picture when I debate creationists a lot. And I say, I want to meet a creationist who can tell me, where do these skulls go from being an ape to being a human? Because anthropologists who measure with tiny rulers the minutia of every single dimension of these things can barely tell the difference. And even then, there isn't a concrete line. It's like, it's all a gradient.
Right.
Different traits change at different rates. So, which is why it's like you don't get the missing link, quote unquote, between humans and chimps wasn't something that was kind of smart and kind of knuckle walking. It was a dumb ape that was walking around on 2 feet. The brain case came later, right? It's like these things are much more of a gradient than people give them credit for.
This is wild. I feel like I'm learning here. I'm sitting here in science class. It's like, it's badass.
We can't do that. We can't learn here. That's
not allowed.
Not allowed.
Learning is bad.
We gotta drop some memes and lower the collective IQ of this group.
But it is interesting that, like, I feel like I'm repeating myself almost.
I'm sorry, I have to interrupt for a second. Philip Gabriel said, "We cannot return to monkey. We never left."
Yes.
Round of applause, sir.
Oh, wow.
I love that. I'm going to steal that, I think.
We cannot return to monkey. We never left.
Brilliant.
That's beautiful.
Monkeys are some of my faves, to be fair.
Something that this popped in my brain a second ago, but I didn't ask because we were traveling down a road and I didn't want to interrupt the road. But another thing that I read that I want to ask you about is ritualistic burial popping up in pre-humans as well. This is something about a find in South Africa or somewhere down there, that there was a cave or something like that where that moved back what we thought. But even then, like even discounting that, we still have ritualistic burial showing up before like modern human, I guess. So I guess go into that a little bit.
it's not even just ritualistic burial in the sense that we're putting them in the ground. With some of the early Neanderthals, we find traces of ochre powder on them. And ochre powder is what many modern hunter-gatherers today use to decorate their bodies. It's paint.
Oh, that's cool.
Oh, wow.
So this was a burial that was deeply symbolic.
So they're actually putting on a decoration onto the body in a burial in order to prep for something. Like there's an intention there that we don't like. You would think maybe it's like a preparation for an underworld journey or something along those lines, but you know, that would be looking at it through our lens, right? You can't. In
all likelihood, though, you're right. It's hard to say. We can't really impose what they thought, but we can note that there are similarities between what they were doing and what religious groups or in kind of primitive, quote unquote, ancient human societies and then modern human societies that are still doing hunter-gatherer stuff are doing. We find in these same areas, in these same contexts that we're finding ochre marks on these in and around these skeletons, we're also finding pollen grains, which is not typically found in that soil. And what that suggests is that they were buried with flowers, decorative flowers.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So it's and you know there are folks that will give you different takes on this. There's an excellent book that just came out called Kindred that discusses how Neanderthals were like us and how they were different. Because they were indeed like us in so many ways, and in others they were just completely unique to us. But they understood. One thing we can know, I would say almost for certain, is that they certainly understood the nature of their own mortality to the degree that they were burying with intent.
That's amazing.
That's phenomenal.
It's very cool. It's very cool. And you know, you picture it, what's interesting too is we know that we inbred with Neanderthals and with Denisovans.
Right. It's like DNA evidence or something.
That was brought up in the chat, and they said, do we know if they interbred? So there's the answer to that, chat.
Yeah, we totally did. I mean, you have to think of it too. We were different species, and in the same way that a dog is a different species from a wolf, but they can still interbreed with one another.
Right.
That gradient was not closed right away. So, you know, you almost have this image of ancient bands of humans encountering ancient bands of Neanderthals. And what did they think of each other? And how did they regard one another? Was it warlike? Well, we know it wasn't always warlike necessarily, because we find their DNA very frequently in ours that doesn't suggest like I remember correctly, the nature of this DNA and its frequency kind of surpasses this pillaging aspect, and it's probably more on lines of like a rendezvous that was accepted amongst both parties.
I don't know exactly where the gradient, if maybe you know this better than I do, but like with Mesolithic structures, whether or not those exist contemporarily with Neanderthals.
So it's an interesting thing there. We know that Neanderthals at least were sheltering in caves occasionally. I don't know that we think they were building anything with regard to like
were those like gathering ceremonies kind of things between like between humans and Neanderthals, perhaps, that where some of that DNA crossover may have occurred. Like were there gatherings or something like that? Like is it possible? Maybe, but I don't. It's whether or not there's like a. Like that's just something that's like an idea that sits there. It's a question, I guess.
Yeah,
I don't know what the answer to it would be.
I don't know either. I think that given the overlap between humans and Neanderthals, and given what we at least can infer that they were capable of understanding, these guys were living across a time span with one another for 200,000 plus years.
Wow, I didn't realize it was that big of a gap, or
that long of an overlap. Yeah.
So I would find it very hard to believe, considering that we know these guys made shelters. We know for certain that they had, things like dried mammoth pelts and things of that nature, building these nomadic traveling structures. We know that was going on. So it would almost be feasible. I mean, I'm totally speculating here, but I would imagine that if you're a group of Neanderthals and you're like, well, the Homo sapiens are hanging out over here. We usually find them by the big rock because that's where all of the Pleistocene woolly rhinos are hanging out.
Right.
And they're here every year. So let's meet them there, and they all bring their stuff and they set up their tents all together,
like
and they go along and they rendezvous, and we would never know.
Some years they might avoid them, some years they might go meet them, some years they might fight them. Like it's just like, it could have been any of them. It could have been that they only do one or two or whatever of those.
Yeah,
But
totally.
like,
Could be any of that.
yeah, it's one of those things about like, and from looking at history, we have this frustration as well, I imagine, where like you could look at history, and especially when you get into prehistory, you have no idea what the reality is as far as like what the actual behavior, what I mean, you can glean some stuff from archaeological evidence, right? But when you get into questions like that, right, you can't answer with certainty because the evidence that these things would leave behind could be interpreted in all the same ways, like between all of them, right?
That's exactly right. You know, and it's such a rough pill to swallow. You know, that it's like we may never know the true nature of these interactions. We know, or some are proposing, I should say, that there was technology sharing going on between these two groups, because we find that humans, some of our oldest, if memory serves, this is a new paper, so I don't know if I'm fully representing it properly, so cut me a little slack if you're double checking me on this, but we know that Neanderthals used knots. We know that they could tie knots, so they could weave and create rope, essentially. And some people have proposed that may have been something that humans taught them, which is funny to me, right? Because it's like Neanderthals are objectively an older species. So how do we know that they didn't teach it to us? Well, we don't.
So we got some people in the chat saying, I was promised giants.
Giants. Let's talk about them.
We must talk about giants. Let's go to super chats real quick, just to check in. Let's see. It's never ancient. Okay, yeah. Hands off my Bible, you ancient astronauts. Loonies, also sorry for how rude I was in the comments about Moab. I really jumped the gun there talking about my God Who Defeated Yahweh video. You're good, Zachary Colley. Eliakai says, I love how fallen civilization tropes started. White people couldn't believe that brown folks built cool stuff. We're too dumb, apparently, and it's sad that it's still carried on today, says Eliakai, yeah. Appalachian Folk Witch says ROUS apostrophe. What are you saying? I don't know what that means. Do you know what that means? I don't know what that means. Help.
I thought Erika might understand.
If human feet, let's see, Mikkel says, if human feet are also hands, are they handy or a big defeat? No puns allowed in the chat, y'all.
Someone else said earlier, Ocean, that your puns were bare bone.
I don't find that very humorous.
Oh, God, no. No. I'll pull out the necromancy puns. Don't start. Yeah. All right. I am loving these lives. Your guests are amazing, says Paige Lamp. It's great to learn together and share that information in a world consumed by conspiracy. I am right there with you. So we have a discussion on giants to tackle. So let's take a look at that. And we have a comment from Wisdom of Odin about giants. He believes that giants existed, I think, specifically in North America. And
Kentucky, of all places.
There was one thing that he said that I don't think is in the clip, but he was talking about like that if we found them, if the majority of humans were like Norse pagan or something like that, we'd find giants and be like, oh, these are Jotun, like these are what we were fighting.
Right.
That's not what that word translates to necessarily. So the word Jotun means devourer, right? It's a word basically for like one that is it might be malicious, more it's like just devour gives you kind of like the context more than say giant does, but it's often translated as giant, and then you get medieval sources that take that translation of giant and they take it to, well, they were big, you know what I mean? Because that translation crossover happened in the medieval era, so you got that retelling that happened, but Jotun meant like kind of like they were mean. So and you have examples of that in the stories where there's one in the story of Hadding in Saxo Grammaticus where he actually befriends a Jotun and goes on this adventure with her, and she's protecting him and is in a romantic relationship with him, but she's the same size as him the whole time until there's a scene where the other Jotun come to kill Hadding, and she actually stands in defense of him in the middle of the night, rushes him to safety, and then turns into this giant being in order to fight the rest of the Jotun, and then the rest of the Jotun actually rip her apart. And it's a cool as fuck legend. It's in Saxo Grammaticus History of the Danes,
That's badass,
book
dude.
1, if you guys want to check that out. But point is that the word doesn't necessarily mean giants. It means devourer, but it did get conflated with large beings for some time. But go ahead.
I was going to ask you, do you think that it's more of that it's almost more of like a spiritual interpretation?
So there's the Jotun. In what sense, actually, are you asking?
Just from your perspective, like when you're reading about the Jotun, what kind of comes to mind for you?
It's usually something that's like similar to a deity, but has like a different attitude. Like I think that the Aesir have, like in Norse, there's like different kind of classifications, and the Aesir are chiefly interested in humans. The Vanir are chiefly interested in nature, and then the Jotun are the devourers, the ones that consume other things, so to speak. So it's like kind of
very
Yeah.
chaotic, very chaotic.
Right. So like that's kind of like where those dividing lines are. But the word giant wound up kind of coming into our language on that front and getting in. So the claim that he's making that, these were Jotun, these giants were Jotun, especially in North America, doesn't make very much sense.
Gotcha.
So anywho, let's go to the clip just so that you guys can see what we are referencing. Here
We had to
go.
watch it, so you do too.
Yeah.
You guys, I need you guys to mentally
Show you a
prepare
map.
yourself
Just-
for this.
Okay.
It's a lot.
If you thought the last clip was wild, this clip is insane.
All right. So counting down. Ready?
3,
2, 1.
1.
Play.
Show you a map. This map shows you supposedly every
Wolf
known
mute.
giant remains found in America. This is not my map. I got it from somebody else. I've tried to contact them. I've never been able to get a hold of them to see where they get their sources. But even if a fraction of these remains are true, I mean, there's countless. And not only that, but how many of these have been stolen by the Smithsonian, which I'm about to get into. From a separate source, I have a claim from the Smithsonian that they have found 17 remains of giants, meaning that 7 foot or higher. Now, the percentage, the percent chance of a human being that tall is 0.000007%, which means they roughly would have to dig up 2.5 million remains in pre-colonial America to find 17 giant ones. So even if there are 17, I mean, I think there's a lot more than that. There is definitely something to be hidden here, or there was definitely a larger population that they're letting on. Now, there are many stories out there of the Smithsonian buying giant remains and then destroying them later. I've even have a picture, I'll show it up on the screen, of 2 men that were showing one around in kind of like a freak show scenario. And the Smithsonian showed up and they're like, hey, we want to see this. And they inspected it and said, wow, this thing's real. And they paid a huge sum of money back then to get these remains. They took it all the way back to Smithsonian. Some months later, the 2 men called and said, or telegraphed or sent a letter and asked what happened to the remains, if they could come see it in the Smithsonian. And the Smithsonian responded that they had destroyed it because it was fake. Now, they proved it was real and paid a huge sum of money for it beforehand, and then just magically make it disappear.
So that was that video. What are your first thoughts, Erika?
My first thoughts is I'm loving everyone in the chat saying that this guy's an idiot. They're clearly Bigfoot remains, which I all of that.
Yes!
I saw that and I was like, that's the galaxy brain take. That's the one I'm into. My second thought is when I first saw this, I loved the notion that, he's coming from this perspective that the giants are walking the earth or have previously walked the earth.
Mm-hmm.
And for whatever reason, there's just a lot of them in Lexington, Kentucky, which was very funny.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. One of the things he talks about is this book, right? That all the copies were destroyed, but he has a PDF.
Yes.
And that talks about how there was a giant remains like in a cave somewhere that was hidden by fancy rocks in Lexington. Yeah.
Two stories. stories. And then one of them he goes to, he was like, I'm maybe a little skeptical of this next one because apparently there was alcohol involved. And I was like, you can just strike it from the record if there's alcohol. Like, if everything
there was giants in Kentucky.
Look, guys, they're not giants. They're just built different.
Yeah, they're just built it. What you really encountered are just like the mountain men of Kentucky who look like giants.
They out there moonshining. That moonshine will do something to you, all right?
Yeah, you know it will. I mean,
Don't start here, boy. We'll start getting into it right here. We'll start going at that. You know, my cousin, he's pretty tall. That giant of a man, I'll tell you what. But
yeah, oh man, and I love the picture that he shows because I did a little bit of digging on that picture, and evidently it was actually bought, or not bought. It was bought by the two folks, the freak show dudes, right? Like
Eliakai is saying he claimed it was an actual underground mausoleum with mummies.
Yeah,
that's it. Yeah. There was one with mummies, and then I think there was one too. Maybe the mummies were the same one as the one where he was like, "Yeah, the remains were giant, like a 10 to 12 foot individual, right?"
Yeah.
Which I mean, so you want to take the position that giants are a biological organism, and like we're gonna run into some problems with what's being presented as giant remains because it's like everyone here, I'm sure, in this panel, and then also many of the folks in chat, were around YouTube when there were like the clickbait thumbnails of like cryptids and things like that, and they're like, you know, new creature found, or like this was taken, you know, at midnight in like New Mexico or whatever. It's like a chupacabra, but it's just like a blurry dog or something.
Right.
And very frequently these.
I'm a fan of the jackalope personally.
The jackalope is an amazing cryptid, but my favorite is actually either Bigfoot, because Bigfoot is a classic, but I also love the Fresno Nightcrawler. Who is
Fresno Nightcrawler. Tell me about this critter.
It's like the world's worst cryptid. It's like this translucent tube that walks like a pair of pants, kind of. The video that they caught of the Fresno Nightcrawler it feels like a shit post, honestly, which is why I love it. But it's the Fresno Nightcrawler and Bigfoot are both excellent. I'm also partial to like any kind of skunk ape. The hominid cryptids, of course.
An ape that can like spray skunk.
They're
stuff.
smelly, yeah. They're real stinky. You know, they live in swamps and mostly in Florida, which I'm sure they're just encountering like Florida natives. And they're
right.
Like,
no, that's what most people in Florida are like. So
they're just like that.
I have family in Florida. They're all like that. Like, you know, yeah.
One stat says Mothman is where it's at. Mothman is also an excellent cryptid, and
Mothman and probably like Wendigo. The Wendigo is one of my favorites.
Yeah, the Wendigo's good too.
I haven't encountered that Yeti.
The Yeti. Oh God.
I just killed Wolf.
It's if only, right? Like if only we have the Yeti. There are a lot of people standing the Fresno Nightcrawler in the side chat, which I'm glad to see. I mean, you have a very high quality chat if there are folks who are also standing the Fresno Nightcrawler.
Yeah, no, we've got some. I remember the Fresno Nightcrawler, and people are standing it. Yeah, no, absolutely. So
you love to see it.
Tell me about. Let's before we could talk about cryptids all day. We should probably have another thing, but let's definitely talk about. We promised giants, so let's.
Yeah, so the reason I brought it up, the reason that I brought up all those cryptids is because they used to show ones of that very similar to what our Wubu here is showing about the giant remains that have been found. Now, the one he's showing on the screen, if you do a little bit of digging, you'll find out that this was actually just like a tall man that was purchased after he died from, I think he lived in like northern Canada or maybe Scandinavia or something like that. And they were just carting him around as like, this is a giant.
You mean he wasn't found in a mausoleum cave?
I wish.
What?
I wish we were finding real giants in mausoleum caves. But the other kind that he shows, or I don't know if he shows this or not, but the other kind that typically pop up is like you'll find a picture of a bunch of archaeologists and they're like stooping over like a very
he didn't show that picture. No.
He didn't show that one?
No.
Okay.
I've seen people with giant claims of like, you know, elephant skulls and giant femurs and stuff like that. It's like this is a cyclops or whatever.
Yeah, and the problem, I'm so sorry, continue.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, the big problem with all of that stuff is biomechanically, a giant biped like that is not going to look like what's being shown in the picture here or what's being shown in the pictures anywhere else. if you've got an organism, right, that's growing to very large sizes, there are a couple of things that have to happen.
We're going to learn how to giant. All right. So this is what a giant would look like. Okay. Yeah, like, definitely go for it.
Yeah, picture you're going to try and create the selective pressures, because he's arguing that these guys are biological, right? Like there's a big difference between saying that there's like a spiritual element to these guys and that they leave physical remains.
Yes.
So it's like, you've got this giant, right? The first step is you've got everything big that we've ever had that grows to these massive sizes. They have these big column-like legs, and typically they've got very short toes that are kind of stubby like that, right?
Right. Like elephant. I'm thinking elephants.
Yeah, elephants, sauropods, things like that.
Right. Yeah. It's like, and first thing is in my head is elephants and brontosaurus have the same fucking feet, right? Basically.
They're the same.
But they're not more closely related than, like, the elephant is more in relation to a mouse than a sauropod, but the feet, right? So, can you, like, what's that called? It's convergent evolution or something like that? Is that?
Yeah. It would be convergent evolution, right? And it's this idea that you've got to stick the laws of nature. One of them for organisms evolving is the square cube law. So the bigger you get, right? If you have a little tiny cube that's like a 1 by 1 cube, as you increase that cube to like a 3 by 3, your volume is going to increase exponentially. So you end up with, like, I think it's like a 27 square centimeter volume with that, or something like that. Because it's base times width times height. So you create this problem where the insides of this organism now have to be accommodated to a much greater degree because of the size increase just vertically.
Like, you need bone density, you need stronger stuff.
Exactly. Yeah. So you're all of a sudden going to have femurs, like just moving from the average human height, which is like, what, 5 foot.
Let's make ourselves twice as tall. Let's go from 6 foot to 12 or 11.
Yeah.
Let's do 11 feet.
Yeah. You want to double that? You're essentially going to have to like triple or quadruple the width of the femurs. You're going to have to kind of lengthen them out. And as you're lengthening them out, you have to have them even thicker and even thicker and even thicker, because everything that comes above has to be held up by the weight of that femur, as well as the tibia and the fibula. You can't have long feet, right? Because that's going to put a whole lot of pressure on those toes in order to kind of keep the weight from, right.
Yeah.
So you've got to shorten up the toes and get those big column-like feet again. But some of the biggest problems come from the organs, because as you increase the height, you're having to fight against gravity to a much greater degree. A giraffe's heart can be up to like 2 feet long. Like, their hearts are insanely
2
big.
feet long heart?
If you Google,
because they got to pump through that neck, right?
Yeah.
And doesn't the blood take like a ridiculous route in a giraffe neck too? Like, it goes all the way up, down, and then up again or something?
They've got a weird, so it's their valgus nerve, I think.
Yeah.
Vagus nerve. Yeah, they've got a laryngeal nerve. That's it. Their laryngeal nerve, because in a fish or in a human, it travels like that far, right? Because it loops down through the I think it's the aortic arch. But in a giraffe, and this serves to common ancestry, right? It still does that loop. So it but you're looping like 8-9 feet. So it comes and loops through the aorta but I digress.
They're trying to make that journey in the neck of time.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
Yeah, just let me run into
I'm sorry, chat. Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, no. You're right though. I mean, so you've got to increase the ability of the circulatory system to account for this double in size. So you've got to increase the size of the heart. All of this is a huge strain on the metabolism. So you're not going to want to waste a lot of time on things like a big skull or a big brain, for instance, if you're focusing on the pressures for height and overall size. So you're probably going to see a decrease in the arms, right? Because the arms aren't actually helping hold up the weight, so they're effectively worthless.
Right, and the bigger the arms are, the more weight it's going to put on the femurs.
Exactly. So you're shrinking of the arms, shrinking of the head, and because we're seeing such a heavy pressure for big, you're probably seeing a reduction in the pressure for big brain, because that takes up 20% of your metabolic activity in any given time. Because we're big brain, we're big galaxy brained animals, so we use a lot of our energy for powering, making shit posts in our head, and so so you're going to have a lot of cost on creating a giant, the pressures for a giant. And you're going to end up with something that looks absolutely nothing like what is being proposed as giant remains. The femurs that we find that are attributed to giants are just bigger human femurs, right? They tend to be like long and skinny. Is it a
Photoshop job or something like that? Like where are we getting these pictures?
Yeah, they're all Photoshop jobs. Yeah. They're all Photoshop jobs. in the case of this guy here, who is a
That's upsetting.
human,
I'm kind of wanted, like, but I guess if you're looking for bones that size, then you're thinking of like what kind of organism would they fucking fit into?
right? Yeah, and the funny thing is that if you found the remains of like Robert Wadlow or some of the tallest humans today, they would be long and skinny, and they would be supporting an organism that is very tall. They would also be incredibly pathologic in nature because these guys were growing to such a degree that they were almost certainly osteoporotic. They had all of these telltale signs, and they all died in their like mid-20s. So, and there's a way, obviously, when you find remains.
Something about the way the bones are growing or something like that. Like you can look at the end. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's the lattice of the bones too. So if you're osteoporotic, your bone density sucks, right? So it's the spongy holes, right? The holes in between the how would I put this? So your bone has sections of it that are they look kind of spongy, and that's because they're somewhat hollow, right? They're not hollow like in the sense that a bird is, but your bone marrow goes through the middle of your bone. That's where the marrow.
What are you
goes.
saying about my bones? I got some solid. Okay, all right.
It's full of marrow. It's full of marrow. I'm calling you out.
I marinate my bones.
So the dinosaurs solved this problem by they got big, but they aren't as dense. Like a dinosaur of equivalent, like a T-Rex is probably less dense for
than an elephant or something.
Than an elephant, right? Like their bones are just much more lightweight. They've got more air pockets in them. So when you find a pathologic human, they typically are osteoporotic, so those pockets are a lot bigger and they can't hold the weight of the organism as well. They tend to break a lot. There's usually a lot of strain on the muscle attachments.
So I think there's stories of Andre the Giant, right, where he was saying like later in his life he was getting like aches and pains and all that stuff.
Yeah, he drank a lot because of his condition.
Yeah,
he would have to drink a lot because he was so big. But he needed to like stay drunk because he was just always uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And the way that this works with guys like Andre the Giant or Robert Wadlow, humans that grow extraordinarily tall, they have the proportions of what we see these giants supposedly, quote unquote, looking like, and they're not biologically tenable. So if you don't have the adaptions for being that big, you are going to have a very short life, unfortunately.
Right.
It's not tenable with like gravity itself is working against you here. All of these guys also had like circulatory issues. They had weak hearts because they couldn't pump that blood to all of the parts of the body.
And the heart is like, it's weak, but it's also overworking like crazy then.
Like crazy, right? Yeah. So biologically speaking, evolving a giant is not going to be an easy task, which is, and what we find supposedly.
Are you telling me that Godzilla can't exist?
Oh my God. Listen, I have a hard enough time coping with Godzilla not being able to exist, okay?
Right.
I have a hard enough time coping with that. But we do have Patagotitan.
We're going to end this stream right now. No, Godzilla has to be able to exist. He's underwater, so he can get bigger, right? Wolf, are we on the same page here?
That is true. I mean, Godzilla.
All right, you heard it here first. Godzilla exists. The scientists said so.
Godzilla won't exist for long when Kong kicks his ass, though.
Whoa!
All right, kick her out.
All right, that's it. Stream's over. Thanks, guys.
Stream's over.
It was nice everybody knowing you.
Everything she said was a lie. Don't listen to anything. Blue's right.
You can't.
All right, we're back.
You bring a monkey person on here and expect me not to be.
That's right. No, I should have pegged you for a Kong person. Like that. That's. All right.
He's big monkey. What are you gonna do?
He's returned to monkey.
He's gonna get his ass. That's what he's gonna do.
All right. No, I'm Team G over here. I have to be.
100%.
Yeah.
Listen, I love Godzilla. I hope they team up. I saw someone did some excellent shipping art of Godzilla and Kong just kissing on each other, and I was like, that's how I really hope it ends.
Oh my God.
Like
they got to team up because some bigger fucker shows up or some shit.
Yeah, no, they make a really hairy, scaly baby.
Beautiful, a beautiful baby. That would be impeccable. Yeah,
giants.
Yes, so giants, right? So giants.
So let's talk about this. I guess go ahead and say what you're. So I'm going to bring up the map, but I guess go ahead and say what you're going to say.
I was going to say the catacombs, so we're probably on the same.
Okay,
page.
cool. So yeah, let's talk about that then.
Yeah, so like this just isn't something that's difficult to check, right? Like Certainly, yes. There are large cave systems under Kentucky. Kentucky is like weirdly known for its cave system. I think Mammoth Cave is in Kentucky, one of the larger caves actually in the world. Which
Come to think of it, I think I've been there. It was
you
like
probably have.
Yeah, like I remember when I was in I grew up Southern Baptist, and I was in Royal Ambassadors. All right, I was on fire for God as a sixth grader, and like we did this field trip, and we learned what stalactites and stalagmites are in this giant cave somewhere, and they're all purple and blue and shit because of the lights in there and shit. And there's it's like a tour guide that's like freaking out about them and showing us everything and getting us excited too.
I was actually going to say before you were like, I think when you said, I think I've been to Mammoth Cave, what I was instantly going to say is, if you lived in the tri-state area, you would have gone to Mammoth Cave. It was a requirement to, kids just got shipped to Mammoth Cave.
Yeah.
Teachers wanted a day off. If you lived anywhere near Kentucky, I promise you've been there.
Right.
Grade 4, it was like the DC trip of elementary school.
Yeah.
Mandatory.
We're gonna shove you underneath a bunch of rocks and hope it goes well. Good luck, kids.
Yep.
Don't be too loud.
The teachers are like getting drunk in the gift shop, and they're like, whatever, like, just gotta bring a bunch of little kids.
Are we doing anything else? No, we're going directly back to the hotel. We gotta sleep.
Listen, we promised the parents we'd keep you guys on a good sleep schedule, and then they're just like, then they're at the hotel bar, and it's like, that's even more expensive.
Right.
Yeah. It's I can't imagine this idea that large catacombs are existing to this degree in Lexington, Kentucky. Or for that matter, all over the United States. Like that
map was huge, right? It has like all these things. And I love when he says, he's like, I haven't checked the source. I reached out to them. They didn't say anything, but I'm going to put it in my fucking video anyway.
I
like,
love his attitude there too. He was like, so he's like saying that I tried to find the sources is to him equivalent to having the sources. And
right.
Those are
this is bad research. I was mad. It's like I saw that was the part that actually threw me for a loop. I was like, "Are you kidding me? You're gonna put your reputation on the line for this map, and you say I don't like even in the I don't know what's about it, but here it is, and it's a thing. I'm gonna use it to make my broader point, though."
He's like, I tried to reach out to the guy, and you're like, "Oh, sick," and he like came back to you and gave you the sources, and he's
like, "I didn't get a response." Okay, buddy.
Like, oh, guess I'll die then. Thank you. Like,
No, but that makes it a conspiracy now.
Right? No, we gotta fight the man. The Smithsonian's trying to hide everything, so
Yeah, dude, big Smithsonian, whose entire industry is showing bones of things, doesn't want giant bones. Like that's unbelievable to me. That
yeah, that's the thing, right? What's the reason why there would be a giant cover-up? As somebody who is familiar with primatology,
so yes,
why would someone cover up giants?
So interestingly enough, when you sent this to me on Twitter, I instantly was like, "Oh, cool! This is the Kent Hovind argument," because Kent Hovind uses these same exact claims, but he comes at it from a perspective of these are actually the Nephilim, and the Nephilim are evidence for Genesis and creationism, and they want to get rid of them because it would be evidence against evolution, I guess, even though if we found like giants, we would just be like, oh, sick, how did these guys evolve? Like it wouldn't mean anything.
Erika, the Smithsonian is trying to cover up the truth of Norse mythology with the Jotuns.
Erika, do you work for the Smithsonian?
Yeah, dude, I'm big museum.
This is what's going on. You heard it here first. The Smithsonian knows Jotun are real. And the way that they're trying to cover this up, they're going to try and stop the poetic Eddas. Like it's.
I am the emissary of like keeping the Jotun down. That's been my singular effort from the start.
Well, we're bringing out a ton of information about this, and it's going to be.
That was bad.
I know I tried. It didn't work. Okay. Anyway, but no, that might be what he's thinking. Like, but why else would there be so I guess the Nephilim thing, that's usually the cover up, right? It's like the creationist Christian thing where they have to change things in order to make the Bible not true so that, we can start fires with space lasers or something, I guess.
Yeah, it's like, oh, science secretly has all this stuff that vindicates insert whatever the person who's trying to spread woo here, right?
Yeah.
And it's all a big academic conspiracy, right? But like my question is, that map was huge.
Yeah.
Could he not just go and like grab some more giant remains? Like this, if they're that ubiquitous.
No, Big Smithsonian has covered it all. They went to every single cave.
They got all of them.
Right.
They send out their black ops.
So actually,
night with seismographs looking for the remains.
You're laughing at that, but we faked the moon landing, so let's talk about it.
Stanley Kubrick and his known.
Well, see, the thing with Stanley Kubrick was it was filmed, but he's a goddamn perfectionist, so he filmed on location.
Right.
Yeah, there you go. Right.
It's like, in order for me to fake this, we got to go to the moon.
We got to go to the moon.
That was Stanley was like the linchpin of the space race for sure.
Yeah.
Without him. The capstone on all the giant stuff is just like, one, okay, if they're biologic, they're not going to look like what he's saying they're like.
Right.
Two, if they're catacombs, if these catacombs are this ubiquitous, it shouldn't be that difficult to support his hypothesis. I can tell you for a fact that the creationists are very well mobilized, and if they thought that there were giant remains, they would be out there with pickaxe in hand, wrenching them from the soil, because that would be their Nephilim, right? Also, something that's interesting is that it's like, if there's one thing the United States is really good at, it's trying to drill for oil everywhere or extract resources whenever possible.
Mm-hmm.
So I would find it very hard to believe that we wouldn't have stumbled across, using like basin modeling or like seismographs or whatever, looking for oil, that we wouldn't have stumbled across something like this. We like
have we stumbled across other fossils using these methods?
Yeah, the Dinosaur National Monument was a quarry, it was extracting rocks in that case, but whatever natural resource that we're trying to get at, I would find it hard to believe that we would never, if they're this ubiquitous, have stumbled across them, because so many times, and it's great for paleontologists and sucks for the energy companies, they'll be out there and they'll be like, oh sweet, like, we're looking for, I don't know, rocks over here, and then they're like, oh shit, it's another freaking Apatosaurus, so we can't dig here anymore.
Oh man,
ecologists are, rubbing their hands together. They're like, yes, another quarry for us.
Let's quick jump.
Ming Mongo said the Smithsonian covered up my stimulus check.
Let's take a look at super chats here for a second, just so that we're getting. Let's see. Human face also hands. I'm loving these lives. Okay, here we go. And from a spiritual point, I've always viewed the giants as a metaphor for primeval things like space or fear or gratitude or the mountains, Yeah, there's some historical precedent for that. It's usually within polytheistic framework. You're looking at Jotun, something that's like, again, disembodied minds of some kind, but then with natural associations like those kind of forces. So that's absolutely a valid way of looking at it from a polytheistic standpoint. But I guess that's the only super chat we have. We do have some members showing up. We got Lori Whitman, who has joined as a member to the channel, and your boy River, which
I love that name.
I love
your
that.
Boy River.
It's your boy River in the chat. All right.
That's
clever.
A name that makes me want to be friends with him, because it makes me feel like I would be cooler
if I had a friend named your boy River.
Yeah.
Like I get to reference your boy River over here.
Oh yeah. They'll be like, oh, his name's River. It's like, you say the whole thing.
Right, exactly.
No,
the man's got good flow.
Always.
Yeah, you say someone.
That was good. You redeemed yourself.
All right, yes, all right. And also the fact that your boy River has become a member of Ocean's Channel. I'm in. All right.
Yeah,
he's a tributary.
It's a big deal.
Yeah.
Dr. Dino says
tributary,
which I'm all about.
Wolf is happy.
So we side note, we have 280 people like watching.
Yes.
We have 143 likes.
Because you're talking about giants, Erika.
Yeah, I think we broke 300 at one point.
Yeah.
Yeah, like how come no more likes though? Like how come?
Dude, drop a like on the video, y'all. Like if you're enjoying this journey that we're on with Erika, talking about giants and like our connections with primates and everything like that, like drop a like. Also, let's shoot another link to Erika's channel in the chat, because last time we did that, there was 100 less people watching. It's wild to me. And we have some super chats that just came in. Original Human, I came from Norse mythology knowledge. I stayed for the giants and being stolen by the Smithsonians. Eliakai says, last super chat on a research point, there was a thing in the Kentucky Historical Society that tore the book that he referenced apart, and it wasn't hard to find. That's a
yeah. Eliakai said less than 30 years ago, so it's not like it happened so long ago that it's forgotten that book was debunked.
Yeah, wasn't it like 1950 or something like that, Eliakai? Like, so there was.
No, it was less than 30.
Wow.
So like 90s.
Jeez. Okay. Yeah.
So the thing that kills me about this is that, and I'm comparing him constantly to the creationists, because that's the competence level that he seems to be pushing here.
Right.
And we've got like the bar, and it's like the bar is here, and it's like sitting in the basement on the floor, and it's like all you have to do is double check the source that you're using, right?
Yeah.
Make sure that your source hasn't been eviscerated by someone else because it's from the freaking 1950s.
But I want giants to be real, Erika.
Listen, man, me too. That's the thing. People come at me, they're like, you're saying, you don't like the cryptids. You're saying that there aren't any hominid cryptids. It's like, I would die if there were real hominid cryptids. I would love that. I would love if giants were real. That'd be so badass.
Right.
But I'm a slave to the truth.
Let's see. We got. Hold on a second. Oh, okay. Yeah, I see what you're saying. No, I do want to keep the length reasonable for rewatch. So we should wind down fairly soon, like in the next little bit, maybe 20 or 30 minutes or so.
I would say about 20 or 30 minutes.
Yeah. So, but I definitely want to keep things going. Thanks for pointing that out, Wolf.
Yeah, man.
But let's see. 5 dislikes in the video are from the Smithsonians.
I was gonna say I was gonna bring up. I see 7 on my end. Looks like the 7 Woo admins found the video.
Or there's also somebody was saying it's because Big Monkey would beat Big, or Big Lizard would beat Big Monkey, and they got to show some Godzilla support in the dislikes. So valid, cool. But
it's okay to be wrong. You're allowed.
Yeah. Oh, no.
Listen. You can. Why are you booing me? I'm right. So,
that's the thing. I saw in the trailer King Kong was using an axe, so see, that's where it's like
he's a tool user. Also, I was going to say something, but I don't want to spoilers. I have hypotheses about the nature of the Godzilla Kong fight, but I'm not trying to.
I mean, have you seen the original?
The original.
There was an American Japanese co-production of Godzilla versus King Kong.
King Kong, yeah.
Oh my God, no! That sounds amazing.
It was done in I want to say it's like either early 1960s or very late 1950s. But the original Godzilla film was made in 54, I believe, and then there was an American re-release, King of the Monsters, in 1955. I love Godzilla. All right, you did it. You unlocked the thing. So, but. After that, you had Godzilla raids again, and then there was a kind of a follow-up where we first see a monster called Anguirus, giant Ankylosaurus relative, and then you have a Godzilla versus King Kong co-production because of the success of King Kong and Godzilla, and the two companies actually got together and said they want to have a fight. Very ambiguous ending.
Is that where that famous GIF of Kong feeding the tree?
Yes. That's where that's that movie. Because you do get Kong using tools, and in the American version, there's actually a point where you cut to a couple of scientists being like, now Godzilla's brain is the size of this marble. And then
him like that?
Yeah, they went out. Yeah, exactly. And then they pull up a primate skull and they say, now King Kong's brain is probably about 4 times the size of this skull, or something like they were just. Both ideas were just really small brains for considering how large these animals are, because they're like 30 meters tall in the original films.
Yeah,
Dude,
but listen, so the thing is, I love Godzilla. I love I do love Godzilla, and I love monster movies, although I'm probably not attuned to the classics in the way that you are.
I'm a horrible nerd when it comes to, I know the directors and the special effects directors and this. I'm that guy. All right.
Godzilla is awesome, and we all have our thing. I could probably name every Pokemon currently in existence.
Right.
Right.
We want to get back on track, but go ahead and finish this.
Yeah. So what I was going to say though is that like I cannot believe that they agreed to do a Godzilla versus Kong movie, and they really just came after Kong like that, or Godzilla like that.
That was in the American version. Godzilla's the Americanized version filmed extra scenes, and of course the monster they're going after is the Japanese one, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, you know, there's a little bit of that in some of the earlier movies where there were American co-production elements. Is that there's a lot of like America like moments in them. So
they're just painting our boy Godzilla like he's got his brain is like the DVD player screensaver, and it like bonks around.
Oh no! But anyway, giants. So there's giants, there's mausoleums, there's where can we get back onto that? Let's go ahead and find the subject again.
Yeah. So like talking about all that though too, it's like, yes, there are certainly some mysteries with regard to like early civilizations here in the United States, but
right.
I think
because there's a mausoleum, right? So we're talking about giant civilizations, a mummification happening. So you would find other things, wouldn't you?
You would find artifacts, right? Like
right.
You would find, like for instance, if you're a giant and you're quarrying a mausoleum, I imagine you would have a giant-sized pickaxe or hammer or tool to achieve that. And with that, you would also have traces in. So this is something that's kind of wild, but we can actually infer paleo environments from things like geochemistry in the rocks. Like we can tell what the environment would have been like.
Mm-hmm.
We can do that pretty far back. So if these guys are entombed from like thousands upon thousands of years ago, which is what I'm assuming the posit is, right? The idea is.
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly when these things were supposed to exist. That's any number, right? Like if they existed at all, you would,
Well, you would be able to clock their impact on the environment, though.
Mm-hmm.
Like anywhere we go, we can pretty well tell just by looking at the geochemistry isn't the proper word. Investigating the paleo environment, I guess I can't think of a better term. You can tell whether humans were there or not. Like we leave a pretty big mark,
right,
on environments that we reach. And I'm assuming giants, in how they're putting it, if they're building mausoleums, they're probably at least at our level of cognition. So they're probably exploiting the environments in the same way. They would leave traces of themselves in that as well. So we've got no kind of artifacts, no tools, no living wear, no clothes, nothing that they were using.
Yeah, I guess if they're mummified, right, you would expect there to be a developed civilization. You would expect buildings. You would expect facilities in which mummification is taking place. Like if it's purposeful mummification. Right.
And if living underground, like that's the other thing I was thinking of is like, okay, well, maybe what they're proposing is that the reason we don't find any of this stuff is that, like the mausoleums, their entire society is underground. Like they're all
that you have this like H.G. Wells style underground giant civilization.
Right, but they're giants, right? Like that means you have a cave system that can accommodate giants,
which isn't very common.
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't even think that.
Hollow Earth theory, y'all.
Yeah, you're reaching into some Hollow Earth.
Yeah, you're
stuff.
you're starting to add conspiracy theories on top of each other.
That's where Hitler ran off to. He was not killed or committed suicide. He went into the middle of the Hollow Earth, and that's where the Nazis are currently like building their army back up right now, so that they can come back out and take back over. But we found cave systems that lead into
that are inhabited by giants. Like the Nazis had to get past the giants, though, Wolf.
Yeah,
I'm debunking your theory right now.
I went off into my flat Earth. Days. Sorry.
They couldn't have caught up with the giants unless
the
dinosaurs are alive in the Hollow Earth and the Nazis are harnessing the power of the dinosaurs, and that's
Hitler shook hands with the giants and now they're working together. That's that's where we're at.
But they're mummified.
What a horrible crossover.
Wait, mummy Nazis.
Oh my God, can you imagine?
So, anyway.
The thing is that it's just like, some of the problems with, and I reference this because it is relevant. It's like some of the problems with cryptids today is people will be
we were talking about how cool cryptids are before we started getting into Godzilla. Yeah.
Right. Yes.
We want them. Yeah, you want them to exist, honestly.
I do. I would love that. But it's like big lake monster. So I've been to Loch Ness, and I had the pleasure of, in Drumnadrocket, going to the Nessie Museum there. And to my absolute delight, they sell unlimited amounts of Loch Ness Monster merchandise, but their museum is actually quite skeptical. They've taken, they get a lot of tourism from, like, Inverness does, and then so does Drumnadrocket from Loch Ness.
But they try not to hype it up, I guess, and promote.
Well, interesting. They've done a lot of research on it. So they've looked into, okay, could it be some kind of trapped giant monster? Could it be some kind of amphibian, or is it a plesiosaur, or is it whatever? And in order to find out whether or not there was a monster in the loch, they obviously modeled the nature of the loch to see, okay, is there even enough food to sustain something like that down there? And that's the connection I'm trying to make here. Is that it's like giants would require a lot to sustain them, right? And
more than humans, honestly.
Well, double, if not. I mean, we're talking inverse. We're talking the
square wall. Yeah, square cube wall, right?
Right. So they require quite a bit more metabolically than we do, and yet what? We never find anything by them, or the Smithsonian just gets to it first, I guess. But they would leave a trace of themselves in the form of agriculture, big, marks in the ground because they're using oversized tools, or
footprints we would find. Like, we find dinosaur footprints like crazy. We would find giants' footprints, and they wouldn't look like human footprints, right? So you wouldn't just see like a large human footprint. You would see like this more circular thing, I guess.
Yeah, but it would still have distinct humanish morphology,
like toe, right?
Yeah, and toes and things like that. But you would find traces of them in some sense. Plus, if they're all living underground, how are they managing to sustain themselves in that kind of environment? They would either have to be cultivating some kind of food down there, or maybe they're coming up here for food, in which case they would leave, again, traces of themselves. But the problem with giants is the problem with most cryptids. It's a big animal that would necessarily show itself in some form or another. But and here's the kicker there: if this guy is biological, if these giants are biological, then they necessarily evolved as well, and we would find a fossil record of them reaching those heights too. We would find traces in the sense of their lineage, but we don't find that either. So there, no matter how you come at this, there would have to be some way, there would have to be some indication that you've got this massive mammal, several times the size of a human, dwelling in underground cities, right?
Right. Or above ground cities that are using underground dwellings for mummification. Yeah. At which point you still need facilities. You still need, because like when you look at Egyptian tombs, right? Many of them are underground, setups.
Complexes, right?
Yeah. Complex, better term. So, but you still have like evidence of an Egyptian civilization that's sitting there prepping bodies to go into these things. And then there's the evidence of the rest of the civilization, obviously, as well, as they wage war and produce writing and have religion and all that other jazz.
Because you're implying that if they've got this mausoleum, they've reached some kind of cognitive level of understanding. So that there's necessarily going to be some analogy going on there that we don't see. If they're living above ground, we should find their complexes. The Egyptians, like you mentioned earlier, and many ancient civilizations, sometimes they would just be like, you know what, we're not really feeling this spot anymore, and they leave. Like Amara was the capital for a while in Egypt, and after Akhenaten died, they were like, we're moving the capital, and they left. And Amara was swallowed by the desert, and yet there it is. We have it.
But they might have left because it was getting swallowed by the desert, or they might have, there's all kinds of things.
Whatever, yeah. For whatever reason, though, when humans leave things, we tend to stumble across them.
Right.
Any trace.
Yeah.
It's like we've got these giants.
We have Katal Hoyuk, and Katal Hoyuk is it's a little collection of houses, and it's considered a pre-civilization settlement.
Yeah.
Right.
The little round.
And there it all is.
Yeah.
But we have evidence of it, and it's not like it was a constant settlement going up to now.
Well,
there it is. You were about to say something, Wolf. Go for it.
Well, two things. Carpathia solved it for us. Clearly, the giants could fly. That's why there's no footprint. So everything you just said is out the window. Sorry.
Sorry, your argument is invalid.
Yeah, that's it. I was just demolished by facts and logic.
Before, I know we're getting close to time.
Yeah.
We're actually over what we normally do, but the conversation is fantastic. But I wanted to kind of like put this towards where, like, the main reason we're even having this conversation is because the mix of historical revisionism trying to tie that with mythic literalism,
Right.
where you're taking things from the myth, trying to make them real historically, but then also replacing facts and history to make your mythic literalism fit. And Erika, I know that you deal a lot with that with Christians. We definitely don't need pagans doing that because we don't have doctrine. We don't have the documents or, religious dogma forcing us to believe a certain history to be able to worship our gods.
Right.
And do you mind if I read a quote here?
Yeah,
Ocean,
go for
from
it. Go for it. And then I want to
him?
talk a little bit about mythic literalism as well, but go
Okay.
for it.
So here's really what like sparked our interest in having this conversation to begin with. Jacob says that he's not convinced humankind even evolved here. There's a huge gap in the evolutionary chain for humanity. In my Norse myth mind, I believe the gods were here. They, Aesir, Vanir, and Jotun were here in some capacity, and we, humans, are what remains of them being here.
I have that screenshot real quick. Let me
Yeah, put it up. and I'm
Yeah,
gonna
let me
finish
put it
reading
up
real
for
quick.
you.
If the first artifacts are 3.5 to 4 million years old, that's a humongous gap. We can't even comprehend that time. I do believe there was a society before us, and a Ragnarok happened that led to the world we are now. Stories of the gods were left behind, whereas once they walked the plains of history. So he thinks the gods were here on Earth physically, and a Ragnarok happened, and that's why we have humans. It has nothing to do with evolution or anything like that. There's also another thing, and I won't read that one because it's just way too stupid long. But
oh, about the planets?
yeah, he talks about the planets and that like he believes that Midgard is the planets of the solar system. That like Mars is Helheim and Pluto is
Leave that up
Vanaheim,
while I
and
get that one together.
it's so stupid. If you have that, you can put it up.
Yeah.
Just for people to like pause and
there was
read later.
It's an idea that and he like this is the thing is that with some of these that he prefaces that it's an idea, right? And that's like kind of the intro that he does into getting into like if this sounds crazy to you, you can ignore it kind of thing. You know what I mean? But it does get that traction that is
right.
You know what I mean? Like
my main thing that I want to bring up with his little rant there that I just read out loud is that it posits that the gods died. Like he believes that Ragnarok happened and now the gods are dead, or just like aren't here anymore. And that leans more into a lot of the stuff that he says where he makes comments about the gods just being elements, or it's a very atheopagan approach when he normally tries to present himself as some kind of polytheist.
right.
He flips back and forth about his views religiously, which is super strange. But
I've
when he
noticed
starts
that it's like it's not entirely clear if he
believes, because he won't
if he's a
actually say it.
polytheist. Yeah.
Yeah. He won't actually say it. Sometimes he'll act like a polytheist, and sometimes he'll act like an atheist who thinks the gods are just great inspiration or something. But
I wanted to, because
go ahead, Erika. Go ahead. I see you
Yeah.
wanting to step in.
No, I was just going to agree with you because, like, as someone who is significantly less educated on all this stuff than you guys are, I got the same vibe when I was listening to the clips you guys sent me. He
Right.
seems very particular about what he chooses to be a literalist about and what he chooses to take as metaphor.
Right. And you see that trend in Christianity too with creationists, right? Where it's like this is a metaphor because I can't fit it into the creationist model.
That was one of the reasons we wanted to bring Erika on, is because Erika deals with this with Christians consistently, and she's like, "Oh, well, this is just a different form of Christianity that I've dealt with in the past."
Right. Right. So I'm gonna get the hold on a minute. Where did it go? There. And yeah, here's the planetary one. Where let's see. You know what? I'm gonna I'm going to try and put them both on the screen at the same time because they're...
Your boy River says, can Wu just crawl into one of those caves and vanish into the earth?
Vanish like the giants did? That'd be awesome.
All right, so we're going to put this over our faces.
Yeah,
for a
snake
little
oil
while.
salesman, grifter, all pagans are green to Wu. Loving these comments.
He just seems like such a huckster.
Right.
Yeah.
So like I've got the entire Jakob legend on screen at the moment. And I guess if you want to full screen it, you can read the whole thing. But it's basically like, okay, so Ymir was not a giant humanoid, but a planetoid. And this is where we get into like physical incarnations of the gods, right? Where they're not deities. They're this ice ball without a mind. And then we have the three brothers taking down Ymir is actually Earth as a planetoid knocking into this ice ball, and 9 worlds, 9 celestial bodies. Like it gets to a point where it's like when he's expressing these ideas and you start to wonder about the coherent setup that he's going. I'm realizing now that these two screenshots actually contain a lot of the same information. It's just you see a little bit below.
Yeah, at the very end, the second screenshot just has like an extra few sentences.
Yeah. And
He seems just so inconsistent.
yeah, it doesn't. This doesn't make sense from a polytheist standpoint. This makes sense from a atheistic, conspiratorial, the myths are true, but in a different way sort of aspect. But when you look into the cosmology of it and you say, well, giant ice ball hitting the earth and then making, working out in this way, there's like just these giant, it's like, no, that's not how the myths were supposed to be interpreted at all. From any standpoint, it's like even from a creationist standpoint, that would be a bad take, right? Because it undermines the existence of the deities in the first place.
It would be, yeah, agreed. It's also just like this idea of a big ice ball is just like not also what happened, right?
Right. No, we don't have any evidence of that at all. In fact, we have evidence of the origin of the universe and planets coming together, and the reason why Earth's isn't actually a giant ocean planet has much more to do with like Jupiter and Saturn's formation, right?
Well, yeah, it's a combination of a lot of things. I mean, we have the moon because there was a collision with the
right, and a lot of water goes away from that, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So you get, well, it was before there was any water on the planet. I mean, you have 2 rocky bodies, and Theia slams into Earth, and then the remains of Theia become the moon. That's the name of this of the giant impact hypothesis idea. Then we're bombarded with comets, and a lot of these comets, as we know today, contain ice, basically frozen water, which in the late bombardment period end up giving us a lot of what we see in our oceans today. And then we did have a water world for a little bitty period, and we did have quote unquote snowball Earth for a little bitty period, but for nothing slamming into each other after
snowball
that.
Earth. Yeah. No, as soon as you have the moon's formation as something slamming into it, but it doesn't make sense that what slammed into Earth would have been an ice ball necessarily.
Yeah, I just don't. Yeah, I don't think that there's just any support for that. Like that. I mean, you may as well say it was like a ball of yogurt. Like there's just support.
Maybe it was.
I would love that.
I wanna highlight a comment here. Raven Bell says, "Not gonna lie, Wu shenanigans feel like Himmler trying to bastardize Norse mythology for the Nazis."
So
same vibe.
Yeah. No. Okay. I want to talk about that a second because there is this whole thing, the Oera book, which is exactly that, which is him. Hey, Calcifer, all right, you're going to come visit. But he's about to whine about opening the door. But the Oera book was this thing of that Himmler loved because it's a complete fake book that has a fabricated language in it. It's a total mess, but and it's based on Victorian sources that we talked about with Beefeld earlier, which are these like racial ideas that are completely bullshit made up, but wound up becoming popular in the Victorian period. and got heavily associated with Norse mythology. The Orlinda book is part of that lineage, and it wound up being a favorite of Himmler's. And he was seen as a little kooky for loving it, but it inspired a lot of the things that he did along the creation of the black sun imagery at the castle and all that shit. So, you know, it's a revisionist creation story as well. And it winds up becoming this kind of attempt at justifying racial differences through the races having different mothers in the narrative. And same deal, same vibe kind of shit. And historical revisionism, pseudoscience combined into spirituality usually results in shit like this. And it's just not something that needs to be welcome within paganism entirely.
I totally agree, because you know, and I said this before too, but like most pagans I know are like really cool people and don't buy into that garbage, you know, of using, essentially what they're doing is they're using their spirituality, the bad guys are, as a vehicle for their pseudoscience. And
right.
The pseudoscience is the vehicle for the racism, right? It's like you've got like a horrible nesting doll of bad ideologies hijacking what was never the intent in the first place.
Tim Matthews in the chat saying the Welsh Viking has a video on the Orlinda book and talks about Victorian revisionism, etc. Yes,
video? Go watch
that video. Go watch that video.
Chat.
Yeah, link
Welsh
that.
Viking on YouTube.
Yeah,
go watch that video.
Definitely, like Welsh Viking. His channel is rising right now as well. He's not a heathen, but he is very historically informed. He's coming at a lot of these subjects from an academic perspective. Check him out. Guy's awesome. Love his videos.
Alert, we may pull him on here.
Yeah, we want to. We would love to have him on.
And he seems receptive to the idea.
Yeah. So, you know, but his video on Viking imageries and nationalism, he covers that and talks about the origins of it and Victorian sources and that lineage of moving into like that whole set of ideas is where we get like Jewish question shit, right?
Yeah.
That's where all that comes from. And it comes back to this one guy who was an Englishman who was trying to pretend to be a German and was clothing his racist bullshit in being a Germophile, basically. Or I don't know if that's the word for it, but like really being excited about German culture.
Yep.
So anyway, that's a whole fucking rant because like the Orlinda book comes up and it's like, I had to run into the Orlinda book actually before I saw that video. I ran into a couple of guys peddling it on Discord once and wound up looking into it and finding out all the bullshit. And I was really happy to see that Welsh Viking covered it because he did a really good job of covering that subject.
Can I read one more quote before we end?
Do it. That was my rant. So
yeah. I don't. Again, I'm uninformed, but I pulled up the video in the side, so I'll watch it after this.
Yeah.
He's an archaeologist, and he's good people. So I definitely encourage. But I want to read this quote real quick before we end to kind of piggyback off that point we were talking about a second ago, where the atheo-pagan vibes and stuff like that. Here's a quote. It says, "I've been working on a theory that what if the gods are the celestial bodies of our solar system? It would match the idea that while invoking different names, all pagans are worshiping the same quote-unquote thing.
Oh, that!
Jupiter equals Odin, Zeus, etc.
Send me that so I can put up that screenshot because I like coming to...
It's in the chat a little bit further up.
Okay,
Underneath those two big ones, it's a small one underneath that.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
It says someone last night actually made the theory that Odin, that our moon was Odin's missing eye, like the well is the galaxy. The well of Mimir is the galaxy, and that our moon is Odin's missing eye.
So
just a lot of weird bullshit.
Can we talk about mythology on that for a second? Because I've got some comments to make on that front when it comes to the Norse mythology.
Yeah, I didn't want to end the stream before you had a chance to...
Oh, wait, no, I just went to the wrong screen.
On that.
Yeah.
That's a trip.
Yeah.
The dude's a trip.
So let's bring that up. All right, so I'm gonna cover up Wolf a bit. I'm sorry, dude. Hold on a second. Actually, I'm gonna move.
Do it.
I'm
just messing around.
Move Wolf right here.
Just hanging out.
All right. And let's make it so all
Was
three
here
of
for
us
the
are on
Kool-Aid.
screen. Cool. So we were discussing things in admin chat. I was working on this theory of celestial bodies. Right. So first off, this winds up getting into a mode of polytheism called perennialism, and it's soft polytheism. Sometimes it's referred to as polytheistic perennialism. It basically is meaning that all things are the same. That Zeus and Jupiter are the same god, and that Jupiter and Odin are the same god, or sometimes Jupiter and Tyr are the same god. One of the reasons why this is bullshit is it's inconsistent as fuck. But the people will try and combine all of these deities. Also, whether or not Thor is Zeus also shows up in these conversations. But yeah, like from a mythological perspective, this doesn't make very much sense that the planets themselves are the gods. Now, you do find some sources in which people are talking about this. If you want to get into Cicero's On the Nature of the Gods, he talks about the gods being spherical and celestial, and that the planets themselves may be the gods and that kind of thing. But he also talks about that from a position that the other character in the narrative that is Cicero's self-stand-in individual tears it apart, right? Just hates it. And that's kind of the point of Cicero's On the Nature of the Gods, is you get into some of the ideas of the gods that are a little ridiculous and get ripped down by the Cicero's character in the story, where he's talking about that belief in the gods are good, but these constructs that you're putting forward don't necessarily work, and here's why. So if you're going to think about the gods, think about it this way, kind of structure. It's an impressive breakdown that's written 2,000 years ago by a Roman. Whatever the case, the other thing here that doesn't make very much sense is that the well being the galaxy, which when you talk about the cosmology of the well and the tree and the Norns and their association with it, the idea of the well being the galaxy just doesn't work. So the well of the weird is something that the Norns are very associated with. It has to do with structures of time. That one of the Norns is the past, another one is present, and another one is becoming. It's a little bit different than the Greek fates. And so you see that the weaving of the tapestry of time that they do is as the weird is being put together, all these little threads of events that are being woven by them are then woven into this giant tapestry that we are experiencing, and we're traveling down these little threads. So the idea that well, and we're contributing to this well through our decisions and actions as we're going down this, that's the cosmology of it. Saying that that's the galaxy,
Yeah.
it undermines it again.
Right.
You know, like all the things that make that mystical and make that important to the spiritual perspective that we hold as heathens, it kills it in order to try and make it map on top of like a scientific view, and then without any backing as far as what the people writing it thought, because they didn't think that about it being the galaxy, and then trying to map it on top of it in a way that doesn't function. Like it undermines the purpose.
It's an unnecessary overlap that also doesn't overlap well.
And it doesn't add anything.
It doesn't. Yeah. I can one with that explanation too. Like it seems, God, it just seems so pointless. It seems such a pointless effort by him to take it and try to work it like that, to try and rework it in such a way.
Right.
And it from my perspective, it seems to just miss the point entirely.
It does. And because, like, again, if you're going to be mapping on top of, like, because people talk about this with Yggdrasil, like, is Yggdrasil the bubbling phone of universes, right? Like, that's an interesting idea. It's not something that you can prove, but it's something that, like, you know, you could look at it and go, huh. But when you start looking at something like the Well of the Weird and start trying to say it's the galaxy, what does that add to the concept that I just explained about what the Well of the Weird is?
Right.
It doesn't do anything to it. It's not even related to the concept.
Right. Yeah, that seems. Yeah, this guy seems pretty toxic.
I typed this out in chat, but I'm just going to go ahead and say it out loud.
Okay.
Sometimes I think Wu wants to kill the gods so that he can be in charge.
Ooh,
That way there's nobody to question him.
that's
If
a
there's
spicy
gods,
take, sir.
if there's gods that are above him, then they could overrule him. Somebody could have some UPG that outranks him, and can't have that.
Well, it's 2 hours and 5 minutes into this stream. I think that we've had a
Bless.
really good freaking stream. We've crossed a lot of ground. We've talked about what giants are. We've talked about the galaxy itself being really weird. We've talked about our relationship with primates and stuff like that. Let's get a link to Erika's channel in the chat from the mods guys. Thank you so much, Erika, for showing up. Do you have any last words, closing thoughts? And then we'll jump into super chats for a little while. And if you guys got some questions or something like that, go ahead and pop them down there. We'll see if we can answer like a couple or something like that.
Yeah.
And I had a blast. I thought this was super fun. I learned quite a bit too. In this second half, this has been super educational for me as well. Man, any opportunity I get to discuss cryptids like giants and things of that nature, or human evolution, of course, God, you can it's like a bat signal for me.
I knew that, and that's why I reached out to you, because I was like, who's going to love this subject is 100% Gutsick given, Erika, right here.
Those statements were tailor-made to piss me off.
We can't, and
funny.
I think the best thing that came from this is the quote, "We cannot return to monkey. We never left."
We never left.
It's so tragic. I love it.
So let's go into super chats real quick. We've got a lot of people who have subscribed, which is huge. And I'm scrolling through all of this. This is crazy. Let's see. Didn't they have an environmental study on Loch Ness and found out either there's a lot of small eels or slightly less really big eels?
They did do that actually, and they included that in their museum. They covered that specific study. But yeah, I want to say they used some eDNA in there. So you can do studies using environmental DNA. You basically take a ton of samples. It works the best with aquatic ecosystems. But you take a ton of samples and then you extract DNA from those samples, because we shed DNA everywhere we go, from our skin cells to our hair, whatever. And aquatic organisms do the same thing. And they found decent traces of eel DNA in Loch Ness. And so they were like, all right, the amount of eDNA for eels that we are finding in here means one of two things. There are several large eels hanging out in the loch, or there are a ton of small eels hanging out in the loch, given the amount of eDNA. And the interesting thing is, it's like people don't really find eels in the loch very often. So they kind of are leaning towards a couple of more predatory larger eels, which would make a lot of sense when you think about the sightings of Nessie at Loch Ness.
We have another question as well. Who needs cryptids when Borealopelta fossils exist? I'm butchering that pronunciation, I'm sure. Do you know what that is? I don't know what that is. I'm going to have to look that up later.
While you're looking that up, the Loch Ness Monster, their discussion, it just proves that Nessie was just a bunch of eels in a trench coat the whole time.
Yeah,
that's yes.
It was always an eel, or it was really an eel. It always was.
It always was.
Is it an
Boreopelta is kind of like an ankylosaur. It's called a nodosaurid, and it's from the Cretaceous. So
we have from Quessa. Isn't it interesting that there are only cool cryptids, but never cryptids that are bacteria or worms or lice? I'm actually not sure if that's true. There might be a louse cryptid out there. Could it be that giants are like overgods of some sorts? Hopefully this makes sense. I don't know.
Not in our lore.
Can we send Wu to whatever planet he claims to be Valhalla? That's a good question from Stu the Druid.
We can do that. We have the technology.
And then we have a couple of super chats that just came in. He's given me the Norse pagan supremacist vibe the entire time. Reclassifying other gods actually gives him more power. This seems to be his theology. That's from Leakai. Leakai's always got the spicy takes on Wu, man. Like Carpathia. She's got 2 videos on Wu. If you guys haven't seen them, check them out. Carpathia of Lilum. says, today I learned that giants can hover, and that's why we don't find evidence of them. Upside down smiley. I have enjoyed the TED Talk. And let's get it. I guess, Wolf, if you found a couple of questions in the chat you want to throw out to Erika?
I've been calling mine out as I saw them.
Okay, cool.
If you think about it, sea monkeys are sort of cryptids.
Sea monkeys are a sort of cryptid. Especially if you get a popular image of them.
Oh
yeah.
God, yeah, that's in like my top 5 letdowns as a kid, and then I've done sea monkeys as an adult, and now that I have grown into a gigantic hyper nerd, I am now experiencing belated excitement at growing brine shrimp from little eggs. I'm like, holy shit, this is amazing! And it's not like the little dudes, but it's close.
So
yeah, Woo is just pagan Kent Hovind. Think on it for a second.
Oh my god,
that's where I'm going.
That's
where I'm going. I can't not go there because of these like things that we have from him, of they're like just incredibly, like not just pseudoscience, anti-science.
Yep.
Right.
He's like the great value brand, though. You know, like he's not even getting like a lot of the claims right.
Here's the thing, though. If
great value brand.
And let's end on this. If Wu wanted to defend his ideas to you, would you accept a debate from him?
Oh, 100%. I anytime, listen, it's an open invitation. Anytime anybody wants to have a debate with me about human evolution or evolution in general, that's an open door policy.
You're welcome to waste your time.
Open challenge to Wu from Erika.
Yeah,
Wisdom of Odin, Jacob. Go ahead, Erika. You've like.
I don't bite. I'll be real cordial until we.
Erika is very kind.
Until we get into some of those primate claims, then the claws come out.
All right. Yet firm.
So with that, subscribe to Erika, everybody.
Erika, do you have any like projects or any videos?
Yeah. What's coming up
live
for you?
Streams or anything that you want to shill real quick?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I love shilling. Shilling is like my favorite thing. I do a weekly upload right now that are called bite-sized busts, where I told you guys about that earlier, where I basically just release like a 20-ish minute video on like little things that I stumble across that also, they don't just provide evidence against, they preclude creationism and things like that. I also have a running series on the big 5 mass extinctions. The next one is on the Cretaceous, which would be really exciting because that's the one that killed the dinosaurs. And I'm also working my way through human evolution video by video. And next on that is on Miocene apes. Which the Miocene is awesome. It really was a real planet of the apes. There were apes crawling all over Europe and doing ape stuff basically in that area because it was a conducive environment. So there's some cool dudes that no one ever really talks about, and I make it my mission to make all monkey academics palatable to the public.
Right, that's making it accessible, making it easy to swallow. Like
general science and busting creationism. That's what I do.
Exactly. And if anybody, Erika is a regular on Modern Day Debate. If you want to see her tearing the living shit out of a creationist, she won't put it that way, but I do. They're really amazing debates to watch. The way that she handles the debate is that she is really friendly, educational, and vicious all at the same fucking time. I've thoroughly been impressed with Erika's debate performances against creation. I'm usually bored as shit by creationism debates, but I love watching Erika do it because she breaks things down, and I learn something every damn time. So
yeah, you just bring some aspirin or some ibuprofen because some of those can get a little intense. Although I take full credit for having, this is my claim to fame, one of the very few conversations that with G-Man where he has not gone full G-Man mode.
Oh my goodness.
So that's my absolute claim to fame.
All right, guys.
I wanna show my stuff real quick.
Yes.
And
I'm gonna let the cat out because he's now bothering me.
Oh my goodness. So yeah, I've got my own YouTube channel. Most of you should know that, but there's 250 of you watching. I'm sure one of you doesn't know. I am growing like crazy. I'm actually flabbergasted at the amount. Just passed 1,700 subs earlier today. And I just hit like 1,000 like a week ago, which is just insane. I'm going through the Havamal, which is the wise words of Odin. I've got a little series on my channel about that. I just did stanzas 2, 3, and 4. And then I put a new episode out every week. I put my rituals up as we do them. we should be having a UPG night in the hold hopefully sometime this week. There's also going to be a book club discussion over the Norse paganism.
The Way of Fire and Ice.
The Way of Fire and Ice.
Yeah, we're going through that book. It's
written by Ryan Smith. I actually reached out to the author. We had some slight criticisms of it, and he's willing to come on and discuss that with us. So it'll be really cool to have the author in the server, and he's set aside some time for us to go over that. There are Discord links in the chat that I posted and also in the description as well. So join the Discord. That'll be Tuesday at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time in the server. It will not be on YouTube. So that's the only way to participate in that, or come and observe that chat. But other than that, I don't have anything else.
All right,
that I can think of.
I'm going to try and close out the show. We've been here for 2 hours and 16 minutes. It's been our longest stream. Thanks everybody for coming out in the chat. We've been sitting here for 2 hours and 16 minutes now, and we're still at over 200 viewers at the moment. This is the biggest audience we've ever had on this channel, and I appreciate everybody. Like, there's been a huge number of subscribers that have been coming in for this channel lately, and I hugely appreciate all of y'all. We've been seeing some members show up in the chat, a lot of super chats, and thank you everybody for doing all of that. And like, I'm overwhelmed. I started, this is going to be like a hobby for me, and now I'm seeing like a ton of people come out and support this, and it's absolutely huge.
Yeah, we really appreciate it.
Yeah. So with that, I would say find a way or make one, but for this episode, I have to say we cannot return to monkey because we never left.
Go big or go Jotun.
All right, and where's the ending stream? I always lose this button. I don't ever know where it is. I'm incompetent.
See what I deal with, guys. See what I deal with?
Yeah, it's the thing.
Got it.